and digital health.
Angela, could you just maybe tell the audience that recording has started, if you don't mind?
Yeah, it should pop on their screens as well, I think so. Yeah, we record this, particularly the main speakers. So if you aren't comfortable being recorded, although audience members, you won't be recorded necessarily anyways, it'll just be the speakers. So yeah, we liaise with startups and also with third levels who are probably providing, you know, those innovative solutions and connecting them in with the larger businesses, the corporates who are, you know, pharma, medtech, and others operating in the healthcare system, and with investors. And actually, we're just off a meeting where we found out that a few of the companies that have gone through Dundalk IT have raised substantial funding in the, I would say, 30s and 40s millions recently, and some of those announcements to come. So it's wonderful to see that, you know, there is money that is coming into, you know, Irish companies, and those companies are operating globally. And it's great to be working with ECH Alliance, who have a global network and who are supporting and helping us to roll out our workshop series and to bring some of those best practices to our cluster members. And this is a representation of our audience, really. The early stage companies, the entrepreneurs and the people in those startups who are, you know, coming up with new technologies to address needs in the healthcare system, the capital that supports them, the investors and the VCs, and even some of the, I suppose, governmental, Enterprise Ireland, DTAF and other funding. Horizon Europe is huge, Horizon 2020 phasing out, but huge emphasis in Europe on society, healthcare, and sustainability. So really a lot of funding to be leveraged, and, you know, with connecting groups of people together, and through ECH Alliance with people across Europe and others to bring consortia together to help move some of that innovation forward. We do a lot of work then with corporates and with SMEs who are, you know, perhaps maybe, you know, digitally competent, but not au fait with the healthcare sector, who are looking to develop their technologies in and to target the healthcare sector. Also those who work in the healthcare sector or have customers in that area, but are looking at now digital solutions and digitizing some of their offerings. And of course, innovations coming out of universities, and many of these players also working with the third level colleges. So some of our key strategies are to build this cluster out and keep connecting people. And there's a lot of people that we're connected with already, and more coming to us for somebody who can help them with particular issues, be them a large company who have strategic initiatives and who are looking externally for innovation, or be they small companies looking for mentorship and knowledge and or, you know, connections to investment and funding. And to be a knowledge hub. So we come from a background, most of us, in terms of innovation and entrepreneurship and corporate. So there's a lot of knowledge within the team on some of the, you know, requirements for business and enterprise building. And we're really enabling partnerships to allow that to happen. Part of this series of workshops is really about, you know, transformation and change and understanding how things are changing, and communicating that to people to create an awareness, but also to ensure that the mindset within the companies, within, you know, groups of employees within companies, is around change, digitization, and what's coming down the road, so that they can meet those needs and be able to provide new solutions and innovate around them. And of course, we're really about, you know, thinking globally from the outset. It's a good place to start, but it's great, and there's no reason for people in Ireland or in Europe not to be targeting the entire globe because of, you know, connectivity and, you know, access to markets at this stage. And actually, we cover some of those topics. We've had a number of topics. Here's our calendar to date. We're probably 1/3 the way through it with this workshop today. And our series of workshops from June 1st through to the end of June are really around some of the needs that we've identified over the last number of months. So we've connected with and talked with hundreds and hundreds of companies, actually, from, you know, early stage companies right through to corporates, and a lot of them. I'm seeing a different screen, Sarah. Are you in charge of something? I can't go back to my slides, it looks like. Oh, okay. We have heard from companies that they're really interested in, data management, and in data integrity and how to use it properly, and obviously in security, and all around that, and understanding how they now change their business model and the way they work and their products and services to a digital business model, and how to transform internally and externally, targeting others. And then I talked about globalization. So there's a lot of good opportunities across Europe, as I mentioned, and cross-border here with ourselves placed very close to Northern Ireland. And also, looking at how we reach other markets, and ECH is going to, work with us on how to access markets abroad. We have a lot of, I suppose, internal expertise on, how to speak with your customer and discern customer needs. And it's really the heart of understanding what you should be supplying. So a lot of different workshops across the next number of months, bearing in mind that people may take a lot of holidays given the recent situation. So this is the series that's rolling out right now, 1st of June, implementation, or a framework for implementation of a digital transformation. MDR has been a big issue for people. Last week it was rolled out officially, and a lot of people, I suppose, concerned and need guidance on that. And then I mentioned a lot around security and data and management of data. So we're trying to address the needs. We're keeping on listening to people. If there are other needs as an audience that you have, please do come to us, because we will find people in-house and externally that will be able to provide guidance to you. This is the team, and reach out to any of us. I pop the email addresses up here. Any of us are open to having a conversation with you. So myself, Sarah, Desiree, and Sarah happy to receive any messages or requests from you. I think that's it
just
for
to be
me.
aware, your slides are on sharing. Yeah, okay, very good. Sorry.
All right, I will escape and hand over to the rest of the wonderful people that are going to do this seminar. You can take me off spotlight, I'd say, Sarah.
Just going to remove the spotlight and then give it to Andy.
Thank you for that, and thank you for that, Angela. We're obviously very pleased to be working alongside DConnect and DKIT to launch this series of workshops, bringing that international flavour in, and hopefully connecting up some of the dots that we've got within our network to enhance and grow the opportunities for small businesses and firms that are linked to DKIT and coming through the DConnect program. I'm very, very excited last week to attend the launch and listen alongside and sit with colleagues from Enterprise Ireland and now, etc., because we're aware of the college there in a position of strength, not just for the reasons Angela's just highlighted, but grasping opportunities that are there that are, we think, quite exciting for small firms and businesses. Just a little bit of by way of introduction. My name's Andy Bleeden. I work for the European Connected Health Alliance, the ECH Alliance. We are the global health connector. We've been in business now for 10 years, just over 10 years, and our role has been to build up a large member organisation. So today, what I want to try and do as part of this series that we're bringing is to highlight what that actually means in terms of a global connector and the idea of an ecosystem. And hopefully I'll leave you with that idea of building your understanding of what getting involved with an ecosystem is about, because that's what we'd like to see as part of the launch of DConnect, that this is gradually going to build that ecosystem. That doesn't just sit within the Dundalk area and region, but also, nor does it just have a cross-border range of opportunities, but as an international ecosystem that joins the rest of the ecosystem network that we've got. My role here at the European Connected Health Alliance has been building our membership and our ecosystem basis, whereby we can work very, very often with different clusters across the globe to establish them and get them networked, because by collaborating, you get the opportunities that you wouldn't necessarily do internationally. So a little bit about us. We're as the European Connected Health Alliance, we're by definition a member organisation. And I'll talk through what that means in terms of our membership, because that's important to us. And it's important for a number of reasons that I should go through. It's important because we act on behalf of our members. We're about 95% full of not-for-profits, government bodies, etc., procurers, purchasers, collaboration partners, etc., and some small businesses too. And that's a golden opportunity to listen to the needs of individuals in health and social care, to listen to the needs of professionals who work in the health and social care system in a way that wouldn't necessarily be so if it were just a trade body. And our membership is very, very representative of that. We also have a large network of people who are part of our global community. We have about 16,500 people who we regularly send out messages to and communications with. So important to understand what we're a not-for-profit, both based within Ireland as a community, as a company limited by guarantee, but also in the UK as what's called a community interest company. So that sets it in terms of what we can do, where we can operate, etc. And I think helps us to position ourselves again as that more needs-led member organisation. So I want to talk briefly about who we are, where we are, but also what we do. So as I said, we've got those member organisations, we've got those bodies that are members of us, but also connect with us. But we're global, okay? And what that means is we have ecosystems and members all over the globe. We have ecosystems in Canada, Latin America, all through Europe. Just looking at launching in Africa, just about to start in India with our ecosystem there, in Sri Lanka and Australia. But we've got an international network that look to collaborate today, and I'm pleased to see we've got some of our international partners on the call today from Australia. So not much longer now, and you'll be off to bed. So good to see some of our members and partners here. But what that gives is an opportunity to connect up in a way that we couldn't do before, our members, to different opportunities, different markets and collaboration potentials. What we do is in a nutshell what you can see in front of you. We're here to connect up some of those dots that are there. Those people that know someone who might be the looking for a new supplier for a hospital, or those people who've got knowledge about new medical devices regulations, or those people who've got intimate knowledge about what it means to start up and raise capital for a company. We also have a large network of health ecosystems. As an organisation, we do a lot of comms and networking, usually just about our members, and that's what you would expect with a member organisation. And we do a fair amount of support for our members in terms of making referrals or connecting up or making requests on their behalf. And then we're involved with a large number, and I know many of you here have been involved with a large number of global events, which give our members an opportunity to explode their message into audiences they wouldn't expect. So at the end of this month, for instance, we're involved with the American Telemed Association in a large global event showcasing businesses from Northern Ireland and Ireland, but with the American Telemedicine Association as a target. And I think that's an enormous opportunity that wouldn't necessarily happen. We're also very much involved with sharing information around funding and tenders, because that's important, because we all need cash, but also we get involved with funding programs as well. So we're a partner in some of the projects and programs that Angela was making reference to just now. That gives us, again, another set of opportunities and collaboration potential with our members and our project partners too. But in terms of why people join us, so they join the European Connected Health Alliance as one of many different reasons, usually just to promote their organisation, because we're seen, and I go back to our status as a not-for-profit body, as a neutral platform. So that enables us to put out messages, whether it be from the private sector or the public sector, in a trusted platform, almost like a club. When I think back to my time within the European Connected Health Alliance, I joined the first ecosystem that we set up in Manchester. And the people who were behind the ecosystem there were trying, I can remember it fondly, even though it was 10 years ago, trying to impress a group of startups and SMEs with great big pictures and diagrams of models and research-led programs. And you could see the people in the audience were pretty not impressed, didn't understand it, and were fidgeting. So my role in those days was in the public sector, and I stood up, look, you come along to this ecosystem to get access to me. I got a great big fat checkbook. I work for social services, and we're desperately in need of working with innovators. And all of a sudden, the mood changed because people understood that they could promote their organisation to us, because we, in the public sector, had no awareness really of what was there on the market, and also pretty low expectation in terms of what our needs were. So by joining a global alliance, you get that opportunity to promote your organisation, to make direct connections, access to our funding and tender alerts, etc. And also primarily to access our ecosystems, because you broadcasting your company to one of 65 ecosystems gives you a completely different insight into a global market. Because what that gives you is an opportunity to listen, and to listen to what the need might be, but also to listen to what the market is. If you're looking at perhaps exporting into a Finnish market, or looking for some partners to collaborate with. So our members that we have are very different, very diverse. So we've got groups who are either government bodies, ministries, departments for health, social affairs, economic development agencies, policymakers. These are important for us. We have about 80 of these, because they bring that almost seriousness to the equation. It says we need to understand what the need is around particular areas like dementia or diabetes, but also we understand that's going to have an impact in terms of us, in terms of budgets and resources, and planning for the future, and policy making. Where we've got those successful ecosystems that I'll talk about, they're ecosystems usually which have got the economic development people involved with them. So guess what? In the Republic of Ireland, it's crucial that DConnect have got the involvement and buy-in from Enterprise Ireland and other development agencies, because they get the potential of the value of the health market in terms of jobs and wealth creation. We also have what I'm quite surprised about when I did my research. We have around 230 universities and research bodies and academic partners who are members of us. That gives an amazing potential to make connections right across Europe and across the globe with those people who are charged with creating new innovation. We've got some of the very top universities who've only joined us because they want to collaborate. Organisations, I'm proud to say, like DKIT in Dundalk, but also other universities from around the globe who are either project partners, they're research leads, they're specialists in their own area, and that gives us a great opportunity to connect up and bring in great minds and collaboration. But also, many of these organisations are feeding out brand new startups. That's what they're charged with doing. And that's the next generation of businesses that we want to see and work with and collaborate. So their champions become our members, and that's a fantastic opportunity to collaborate all across the globe. Some of these universities and bodies you'll be aware of, and some of them you won't be. But again, they bring that level of research and collaboration in. We also have around 120 hospitals and healthcare providers. Well, that gives us a direct access to a giant healthcare market for our members. But also, again, because of that neutral platform, under procurement regulations, a lot of these hospitals and healthcare providers will be prevented from dealing face to face with with potential suppliers because of procurement concerns. What we offer is an opportunity through our ecosystems where they can stand up and say, well, these are our needs. This is our need as a cancer specialist location. This is our need as a children's hospital specialist. But also they can turn around and demonstrate what their best practice is, because very often you get hospitals that tend to work in silos and without thought or linkages to other genuine collaboration that's happening, not just from around the globe, but even just in the neighboring region or the neighboring city. So our ecosystems offer a potential for hospitals to link up, because we know, and we've seen it in many hospitals, where old practices die hard, and we've got some great hospitals here who are trying to change both best practice, but also utilise our network to bring in collaboration from other countries. And I'll give you an example. You know, we've got the Hospital University group from Helsinki, HUS, who bring with them 23 hospitals, university hospitals. So giant collaboration potential there of excellence, true excellence, and some of the other names you can see on the screen bring that too. But to have that group of around 120 within our network gives us that, I think, credibility for our members to be able to engage with genuine healthcare specialists. We also have a large network of companies that join us, and they can be both very, very small startups that join us for almost their first engagement, to SMEs and medium-sized companies, but also those big companies that come in. And big companies join us not necessarily for the reasons you think, because you'd think they'd be joining us to market directly to hospitals or to city councils. But very often these are large companies that, because of their size, because of their success, have become themselves so bureaucratic that they fail to be able to innovate internally. And so they turn to small companies, the type of companies that we would be hoping will be coming through DConnect. They turn to those to bring in innovation in-house, because it's often cheaper. And I think that's an enormous opportunity for our members to both do business-to-business connections, but also to seek for alliances in countries where perhaps some companies won't necessarily venture. So a lot of companies also join us because they're looking for delivery partners in markets where they don't have specialisms or they don't have connections. So and I'll give you an example. Just the other week, we launched a Europe and Africa event, and one of the companies approached us and said, look, we're particularly interested in making a connection with someone from South Africa because we're entering the market there. As it happened, one of the other speakers on the event had that connection, could give them the guidance they needed, so they didn't make the same mistakes that perhaps they would have done without that. So that's quite important for us. What's really important for us as well is that we have a collection of around 80 patient and citizen groups who joined us. Now, that's important for a number of reasons. We've got small, specific regional groups based in Scotland or in the west coast of England, but we've also got nationwide groups and umbrella organisations across Europe and the globe. Those bring one thing, and that's need. We can get direct, unfettered access to people who've got direct experience of living with conditions, direct experience of what their needs are, in a way that we couldn't do necessarily with a university group or with the municipalities, etc. But what we've also got with those groups of patients and citizens groups is, because a lot of them are umbrella organisations of other smaller organisations, that gives us connections that would be unimaginable without them. And I'll give you an example. We have a group such as Euro Carers who've joined us. They work with unpaid carers across Europe. So that's a vital connection across 28 countries with 71 different organisations. But in some of those organisations have connections that we don't. So our connections that we have as the global connector are not only just our own, contacts and members, but there are members as well. And that gives us, again, that potential to bring the right people together within the local ecosystem that we wouldn't necessarily be able to do. Just recently, we've opened up in a couple of countries, such as Moldova, a brand new ecosystem there. What that's enabled us to do is they have a number of the stakeholders that we will bring together in an ecosystem. I'll show those in a moment. But they lacked direct contact, because they were a government body, with patients and citizens organisations. So what we could do is use our members to populate those ecosystems, ensuring that there's vital elements are there to ensure that the idea and the concept of leading with a need is a possibility for that ecosystem. What that gives us then is a collection of all those types of members, all the different stakeholders within health and social care, all those little dots that I referred to. What that gives us is the potential to bring both need and solution together, both opportunity and a direct voice of those people who have, I think, been not listened to for far too long. What we've done with those is bring them together into what we've called an ecosystem. And some of you have been to some of these before. But the idea behind those ecosystems is that we'll bring together, and we're starting to do this with DConnect, a permanent community of all the stakeholders that you see in front of you. That's important to bring all of them in, because typically, when I first started in healthcare world, there were so many silos in health and social care where people wouldn't talk to each other, wouldn't connect, wouldn't communicate, that very often best practice went unheeded. Need wasn't listened to. So we flipped that model on its head of a set of workshops and said, we will create, instead of a seminar or workshop, a permanent ecosystem, bringing together all the stakeholders, but with patients and citizens at the centre. Leading with a need, demonstrating what is needed in terms of solutions and services, whether it be on dementia or AI or fall prevention or nutrition. But by breaking down the silos that are there, by enabling people to communicate with each other in a neutral platform, we have the power with our membership then to convene these stakeholder groups in a way that couldn't necessarily happen before. And they have to include companies, they have to include patients as equal partners, as well as the education research partners, as well as the policymakers, because they're there to transform health and social care. And lastly, they're also there to create economic growth, because if our largest spend is on the health and social care sector, surely that greatest level of opportunity should be there as well. So that, in a nutshell, is our ecosystems. I'm going to talk in our next workshop about how we've extended that model to grow into an international ecosystem network of 65 ecosystems, and what role there is and opportunities there are for DConnect within that. But that's enough from me for today. I'm going to hand back to my colleagues for the next part of the session, and I'm happy to answer any questions. But we'll continue this as part of these workshops develop, to understanding the role and the opportunities that are there within our global ecosystem network. Thank you very much.
Now we're going to hand over to Diane Nevin, who's going to introduce the concept of a digital framework and explain to us how we implement a digital a digital framework in industry and in business.
Okay, thank you for that introduction. So I just want to kick off leading into what we just discussed from Andy, my colleague there, to discuss a little bit around the framework for implementing digital transformation. So I want to just kick off firstly a little bit around my background. Andy has given a fantastic introduction in regards to the work that we're doing in ecosystems, but my background is I'm currently working with ECH Alliance as an ecosystem strategy manager. And basically, I get the opportunity to work with all of those amazing ecosystems that Andy mentioned there that are working across Europe, across the globe, really, in terms of AI, looking at global capacity and digitalization models. So it's given me a greater prospect, if you like, in regards to the information and the digitalization that's going on within a global side of things. Primarily, I come from a business and e-health consultancy background. Not shy of 20 years really in terms of senior management in regards to business strategy. And I'm hugely, extremely passionate around e-health consultancy. That's why I aligned myself with ECH Alliance. They're an amazing, innovative organization, as Andy introduced in terms of from a global side of things. I am proud to say that I'm a founding member of eHealth Ireland within the HSC. So back in 2015, 6 years ago, we looked at the implementation of digital transformation within the HSC. So again, that was around how are we going to create a strategy to implement electronic health records. We also had the blueprint for the new digital hospital, the new children's digital hospital. So we're a very active high-level board where we make a lot of decisions around all of the pilots, e-cancer, e-pharmacy, everything around that particular area. And that's where my passion really lies, is within e-health consultancy. I've also been a program director, just very quickly, around lecturing over the last 6 years, innovation, entrepreneurship, which I'm really passionate around, data analytics, and a little bit around the digitalization side of things also. And I'm also, lastly, again, a proud member of the Empower Her program board. So that's within GMIT, within Ireland, part of the Innovation Hub, which is New Frontiers, the New Frontiers program with Enterprise Ireland. And the Empower Her program was funded within Europe to look for the West of Ireland. So we started to look at the West of Ireland because there was a lot of successful accelerator programs within Dublin. So the West of Ireland was lacking that. So we started to run an accelerator program, a START program, and a growth program for female entrepreneurs. And it's been hugely successful over the last 4 years, and it's rolled out from 3 counties to 6 counties. So I'm really proud of all the work that we've done in that particular area. So that's just a quick introduction about myself. So I just wanted to kick off a little bit around what is digital transformation. And I wanted to use this as a definition. So digital transformation is all about becoming a digital enterprise, an organization that uses technology to continuously evolve all aspects of its business models. So again, what it offers, how it interacts with customers, and how it operates. And that is a quote really from Deloitte. And I think that we'd all agree that it gives us a really great grounding aspect really about what is digital transformation. So I just want to move on to the insight to transformation. So digital transformation is not just technology, and I'm going to make reference throughout this presentation because it's so important that we just don't see it as completely technology. We have to really look at the people that's involved in the technology, be it your staff, the employees that are using the technology, or the end user themselves. So when I think of digital transformation and people, it's almost like a hand in a glove. One can't function without the other. So people is hugely important in that particular area. So it's a business strategy that requires organizations to re-envision existing business models. So again, where are you currently? If you're a startup and it's a blank canvas, great. You can create and operate and develop a really digitalized business model. But however, if you're an organization, a large organization, you really need to take stock of where it is that you need to evolve to, and embrace a different way really of bringing together people. And again, people have been hugely important. So you have an organization, of course, and they have a hierarchy goal in terms of a target that they want to approach. And that target might be to digitalize the actual business model. But the people within the organization, while they may work within a multidisciplinary team, they may actually work, as Andy made reference to there, on a silo capacity. And there is no really transition within that. They're not transferring their knowledge within the teams for the actual company to grow. And perhaps they may be working on different systems, or they might be working on different products, and they don't feel that they should share that information. So I guess really around that is for the organization to take stock really and look at, what is the digital backbone? And the digital backbone, again, is to look at the building blocks and the elements that are in the building block really that needs to be altered to process within the digital transformation that they're trying to occur. And by doing so, they will go on and create their own digital transformation framework. So it's basically looking at what needs to be altered within the digital transformation side of things. Data, goes without saying, we're all hugely aware of how important data is, but the sad reality is that a lot of organizations, their data that they operate within is below basic standards. And that is a real issue, and I'd be very passionate around the work with data and how important it is. But if you look at a large organization, they'd really want to look at, how are we going to transfer and build around a new understanding of how we're going to structure unstructured data and gain a greater understanding. And also within data is that, we really need to look at the operation, the capacity within an organization. And what I mean by that is that the people that you have operating within the organization, we don't all have to become data scientists or a data analyst. That's not what's expected. However, that companies use a lot of resources trying to fill in these particular gaps and then blame the IT function for not delivering the digital transformation side of it, where it's really important to look at, who can we actually bring into the organization, a data scientist, a really innovative, well-led CIO that can actually help us with this process. And by doing so, you can go on to create a data-driven culture environment, which is really important, that you're actually you're going to create a culture that somebody knows, why they're taking the data, what they're going to do with it, how they're going to use it, how they're going to recur it. So it's really important that everybody, and it's a transition that is constantly occurring, really, really important. And it's something that it's addressed right across the board, which is really important. And again, the processes is that, how are they managing them internally? Are you looking at your existing processes that you need to improve to become more digitalization side of things, or actually are you looking towards digitalization and new model overall? So just a little bit around a digital transformation framework, and I'll go through the different processes. But the first and foremost point would be the transformation insight. So as a new company or a startup organization, as I said, you have a blank canvas. But if you're an organization that is running and you want to park up and say, right, how are we actually going to digitalize our business? So we're going to look at how are we going to transform it. And the insight is huge. So the insight really is, what is it that you want to do? Where is it that you want to be in a number of years? How are you going to get there? A lot of insight around, and be very clear on your goals, be very clear around what is that you're actually trying to digitalize within the business model. The team, really important, as I've made reference to, the importance of people, the importance of a team. You need to be honest with yourself. Perhaps you don't have the people within the organization to bring this to the model that you want. And if so, that's okay. So how do you approach that? Again, by creating somebody with a technology, from a rich and technology background, that could bring the team along, upskill people, train people, get people excited and on board with digital transformation. And because there can be a little bit of that fear of, will I be left behind? Am I good enough? Can I meet those requirements? So it's really important that you look at the team side of things. The business applications, then a complete in-depth review of the business applications that you currently use, so that you're currently using with, from a staff point of view, the applications that they use, your customers, the end users, what applications they're using, how are they experience that, an overview of all the applications, and then of course the analytics. The analytics around the business applications, that would be your BI, your business intelligence, your data that you're occurring, that is actually developing into big data, how you're storing it. Really, really important in terms of all the technical side of things within the analytics. Digital innovation then is when you've improved on the previous points made, your digital innovation is, what is it that you want to do? Do you want to actually focus perhaps that bit more on AI? If so, why? What are you going to look at? IoT, as we said, the Internet of Things, sensors, what information? Could be something simple as chatbots, try and reach out and engagement. Be really clear on the digital innovation that you need. I'll talk about the investment side of things in a moment, but have really clear definitions around those particular areas. And then lastly, really, is the digital enablement. How are you actually going to apply all of this? And it goes without saying is that it's a moving target. It's not something that, when I think of digital enablement, I think of moving away completely from project management, an old waterfall model, and really working within an agile methodology process, which again is increments and iterations, and working through everything with sprints and learning. So you have to be going through a growth model and really developing all of your applications and having some success and failures and learning along the way. So that's really important. My slides are stuck. Okay. So key areas of digital transformation, again, I want to address culture and leadership. Really, really important that if you're looking at the areas of digital transformation, that you start within the culture. It starts from the top down. who's the leadership? Is everybody on board? Is everybody clear in that particular area? So when you move on to customer experience, you want to really dive deep into the customer discovery side of things. And, what is their experience to date from a digitalization model? Walk through the different touch points that they, experience. How can you actually digitalize and improve that particular model that you actually seek to improve? The operational process side of things, again, it's just, looking at your internal models. What is it that you can, operate? Is there something that you can approve in regards to your team, the overall processes within the organization, and the business model itself? So, as we said, is it a business model? Is it a complete shift of a business model that you need to operate within? If so, why? Or do you actually want to start off perhaps with a particular project, gain some momentum and success, and improve from that? So it's really, really clear of how are you actually going to digitalize your business model? Do you have everybody on board within your organization? What is the culture really around that? And again, your digital strategy, meaning how are you actually going to get there? Which is really important around the operational side of things, the investment side of things, that you're really, really clear and that everybody's on board, and transparency rather is core. So why is digital transformation so important? If we look at the increased productivity and efficiency, so when things are working and they're working well, employees are really happy because they can benefit and be more efficient if they can work within digital tools that offer more of a benefit to their customers. It can also help them gather the data that they need, which will help them later down the line in making informed decisions. And I say informed decisions, so it's not a finger in the air, we think this is going to happen. You're really basing your information on, data analytics, viewing all the process, which again, in turn, will help you be more efficient. Increased customer satisfaction. So again, the customer demand is there, it's huge, and the demand is changing, and we have high expectations from a technology point of view. I mean, if we go back from when I started out with this whole dial-up, when we had patients and everything else, I have my son that's just turned 13, and if he doesn't get into something within a second, he's out of it and he's complaining. So expectations are changing all the time, in terms of 5G, the speed, the brand, and all of that. How are we actually satisfying that customer satisfaction? And then in turn, it will give us greater system protection. So, that's fundamental. And I know Angela and Andy made reference to the other workshops that we will be employing and working around cybersecurity. We're all aware of the cybersecurity action that's taken within the HSE and the unfortunate circumstances that it's involved, and the financial aspect is huge. So again, when you look at you're monitoring your own digital tools and you're running tests and trials and you're creating the data, you're managing the data, it will actually give you a greater system protection if you build a cybersecurity policy around it to monitor it as much as you possibly can in anybody, in terms of protecting your data overall. And again, which will help you eventually in terms of the operations strategy and investment strategy, should help you towards greater profitability. So problem solving and digital transformation. So again, transforming the culture in terms of how are we actually going to solve, what opportunities are there, but again, what are the many challenges that we are actually going to face within the organization. So this is where we start with the digital journey. And it's really important, again, to start the digital journey and understand what is the strategic investment that perhaps we need to involve, what is going to help us give us a more competitive edge, what is the journey that we go through. And again, it's a journey, it's not a destination. It's very much a moving target, and it should be evolving constantly. However, you need a steady strategy to evolve, to look at, to make sure that you are evolving and that you are actually occurring the information that's required. And again, the mindset, and I know Angela made reference to it there, it's about the mindset for the digital future. Does your organization have that mindset? Are you excited about the mindset? What is it that you need to do to develop, these key problem skills that are actually going to occur, no doubt, in the future? And again, a culture to be a technology rich environment. And by that, I mean, is that most organizations, they want to be, they want to have they know they have to have digital model or some sort of digitalization. However, they perhaps fear it. they don't have confidence in it, but that's something that can be worked on again with the people and the talent that you bring the organization and the type of trials and testing that you do within. But it's okay to have that fear and also to try a little bit around, you know, what is the culture? Where do we actually need to get to, which is really important. If you look at COVID, before, you know, a lot of organizations, perhaps, you know, smaller organizations didn't have the website up to date, and then now all of a sudden it became, we actually have to have a digital model. Well, we don't, I think we don't have an option, you know, in 2021 to become very digitalization model. So I guess to embed a culture around technology is really important. And again, technologies calls for exponential thinking. So if we think of, you know, how fast technology is changing, the speed of it, you know, it has increased by 50% over the last 18 months. We're really working, and increases costs to operate this digital transformation is constantly reducing. So we have to, you know, call and think about how are we actually going to problem solve. And I think a little bit around the problem solving that I'd like to make point to is that, you know, from an organizational point and perhaps sometimes within a personal side of things, is that sometimes the problem is we think we shouldn't have problems. There are always problems, there will always be problems, and it's how we operate within that and create, again, a problem solving mindset, which is really important. So, you know, scenario building can be greatly appreciated. So if you look at, right, how are we actually going to operate within this, you know, fixed to growth mindset? How do we actually operate within it? We look at scenario building or scenario planning, scenario thinking as can be considered. So again, you look at multiple scenarios. So again, if we look at COVID, for an example, you know, we've had health organizations and, you know, everybody within that organization looking at scenarios around vaccine rolls out if there was a virus. And unfortunately, there was a virus, and the scenarios were that, you know, every country would start to shut down. Some countries would do better than most. Some countries would react that bit more. And throughout those scenarios, yes, some of them were fair played, but others, you know, came about. Perhaps some countries acted late to the game as where they shouldn't have. Other countries held that data and didn't share as much as they could have, and that would have been not expected. So to work through multiple scenarios really and experiment with them. So, you know, if this was to happen, how could we actually occur? What type of investment would we need? What is it that we need to do would be really important. And again, continuous improvement, which is really, really important. How are we actually going to improve? What is it that we're going to learn along the way? And again, problem solving mindset, to develop it, to make sure that you have people within your organization from the top down that, you know, invite problem solving, send people that can actually, you know, invite it and look at it as an opportunity. It's not something that needs to be feared, and putting a lot of time really around the scenario building. So developing a business case, then I'd like to overall discuss the general principles. So when you think of developing a business case, it may be on a larger business case document that may have to be submitted at board level, or perhaps you're in a smaller department and you just want to look at a particular project. You want to look at something around the IoT side of things, and you may have to initiate and develop a PID, project initiation document. So what you really need to do is articulate the digital initiative and make sure that the digital initiative is in line with the business model, that is in line with the business goals and the business objectives. And again, look at the impact. So what impact is the initiatives going to have? You know, are they all positive, great? Are there any negatives? Be really clear in terms of the impact that they will have, and describe the delivery of the results. What will the delivery look like? What will it look like from an organization's point of view when we actually get there is really important. And internal and external stakeholders. So, you know, be ready to defend, explain, bring people through the actual transition of what it is that you actually want to do, where are you actually going to be in terms of the business case model, etc. So just a little bit around the process in terms of an overview is that when you're developing a business case document, you know, you want to determine the approach, and that is basically what is your desired outcomes, you know, and then go on to develop the structures around the desired outcomes, but being really, really clear in terms of the outcomes and the desires to start with, and develop assumptions. This is where all of your assumptions go in terms of the scope that you need. How are you going to predict, simplify, and clarify? It's really important within the document to spend a lot of time really around the assumption side of things. Determine your benefits. So the benefits really at this particular stage would be around the costs, because when we think of embedding technology into a particular company, the costs are huge in that particular area. So we're looking at capital expenditure, operational expenses. So look at the benefits within each particular area. Again, calculate, the financial impact side of things. I won't go through them all, the IRR, etc., the payback side of things, and of course the risk analysis, which is really, really important. You're going to have assumptions, you're going to be working towards targets, and you're going to have a risk analysis. And again, it's going to be a live document. And this is where we go back to the agile methodology process again, is that you're constantly working with live information. It's not something from an old project management style, that you're creating this project and you estimated that it would cost X amount of millions, and then 12 months, 18 months later, you're reporting it to the board and you've gone a huge amount over, and that can happen. Of course it can happen. But when you're managing the risk and it's something that you're addressing and you're making changes throughout, it's an awful lot more clear in terms of performing the risk analysis throughout in terms of a live document. And again, look at it, the non-financial. So while financial is hugely important, you have to look at the impact overall from a non-financial side of things. How did it embed within an organization, within the teams? Did they learn? Was there a divide? Was the change management side of things that bit more difficult? In all of those areas that you'd be looking from. And again, summarize your findings, your conclusions, and your recommendations. So they're the points really when you're developing a business case document that you should consider, be it a small project that you want to implement something small, or be it larger, a document that you would submit to a board, etc., which would be really important. So I just want to touch on digital investment. And again, benchmarking and investment. So we all know that the investment side of things is crucial. Do you bring in somebody, within an investor, etc. But you want to look at your operational investment, and by your operational investment, again, is your strategic strategy around your strategic innovation, and that is going to be what is going to give you the competitive edge that competitors will not be able to replicate or copy. What is the internal operation investment that needs to be made? The process improvement, again, where are you in terms of your strategic roadmap? That could be a little bit around your culture and the governance within the organization also, which is really important. But this is your roadmap that you actually need to align and process through. And again, automating your operational process really around your user-centric design. Do you have the skills, the capability within the organization to implement all of the investment that's required, all of the improvement that is required throughout? And again, an example of that would be, are you going to develop something yourself and keep it in-house, which would help you on the competitive edge? Are you going to, externally seek outside your organization to have something built or developed for you? So that's really important in terms of the digital investment. Be really clear. It's all well and good having this digitalization model, in your mind, but you have to be very clear on what it is that you need to spend to get there, and what it is in terms of the strategy and the involvement throughout. And the digital automation side of things really is, again, you want to become profitable, and that goes without saying, every organization. But I think it also needs to be pointed out is that, a lot of organizations are working within the same digital capacity, and that by using the same digital tools. When we think of innovation, a lot of times organization thinks that they have to be hugely innovative and create something new. And that's all well and good. But I guess what I'm saying is that when we develop the speed of the technology and we keep developing there, things will open up. But it's rarely that we're reinventing the wheel, that something is completely new, because all of these technologies are there. They have been there, but the innovation is really how we're using the technology, which is really important, and, becoming profitable from that, creating your own, I guess, competitive edge will help you with that. But again, that knowing really in the back of your mind that organizations will, if they don't have now, they will have access eventually to the technology that your organization is using. So it's not about the technology, it's about how you're actually using it, which again comes down to your value proposition. What is it that you do differently? Why would somebody, use your services? What is their user experience within that particular area? And again, one thing to be mindful of it is profitability attracts entry. So, you know, even if you were fortunate to be, you know, a market leader and enter the market, you know, industries will adapt to look at where the profits are. And by doing so, there will be a reduction in the overall profitability. But I guess the positive side of things is that you can attract, with competition, competitors been attracted into the market, you can benchmark continuously in terms of your organization of, yes, you can become really profitable again, you can lead within the market, but you'll understand it and you have a real clear understanding of where you are in the market, what is your value proposition, what you bring to the market. And again, this becomes more effective as time goes on. You know, if you look at all of the different companies and their operation, they possibly within the same functions, it's how they're operating and the end user experiences, it is the difference really. Strategic investment, again, digital business information, we're looking at your unique digital process. So that again is, you know, what makes you unique? What's your vision? What's your strategy? You know, whatever it is in terms of the investment that you need to spend or that you need to operate within, have a clear mindset of who you are and who your organization actually is. And the strategic investment, again, you know, are you going to look at new business models, perhaps look at, you know, new products, lots of different strategic innovation. Are you going to enter a new market? Are you going to expand your product range? Whatever it may be, that you actually have a strategic investment model operated within. And again, the strategic efficiency, that, you know, everything is efficient, whether you might be reducing costs, whether you're expanding within your market, which is important. And again, leading in to, again, your competitive advantage. All of this will lead into, you know, you are actually being competitive. It will give you the competitive advantage if you can develop something and keep it in-house and develop and have a team around it, and, you know, you can explore it and adapt. That will certainly give you the competitive advantage. So brainstorming strategic innovations, then, you know, the digitalization side of it is just a few points around it is, when you're operating and you're digitalization, your business model, you're going to look at, you know, what is the shift? Is it just a shift in a particular area of your digital model, or is it a complete shift overall? And if so, how are you going to get there? What is the digitalization capacity? And it's really important to brainstorm, you know, before and throughout the particular project. And then, of course, to create the structure. So you know where your starting point is, but how are you actually going to develop a structure? What is the structure actually going to look like? What needs to be put in place? The processes, again, you know, the internal side of things, and do you have the IT capacity? So that's really important, because we're talking about, you know, technology, embedded technology to make it more digitalization in a business model. So all of those points are really important. But if you don't have the IT capability, then that's a stumbling block for sure. So that's really important about, you know, what is it that you need? Who do you actually need to work with? The strategic investment that really needs to go in to the IT capacity, or it won't work. And again, your offerings. So what are you offering currently that you could revamp and make it more digitalization in terms of the IT capability? And then your engagement model throughout your learning in a more agile process. Everything that you're learning, you're adapting, and it loops. It's a growth engine. It loops through and again over in terms of your learnings. So just very quickly, a little bit around the roadmap to your digital transformation, the phases and steps is, again, you know, you're setting the stage. And by that we mean is, you know, what is it that you want to do? You know, what is your digital transformation journey going to look like? Do you have everybody on board? What is the culture going to look like? What is the organization going to look like when it becomes more digitalization side of things? You know, fixing problems, which is really important. How are you going to fix the problems? How are you going to change any particular problems, and having this problem set mindset? Again, around the programs, the initiation programs, and the innovation itself. So the innovation is really important, what innovation that you're going to use. And all of those steps will be embedded around the innovation that you seek as an organization to explore and to embed. So just to speed up transformation, again, the priorities is your digital infrastructure. So does your digital infrastructure embed a change policy? You know, will it allow people to embed the type of change that you want to operate within? That will allow you to benchmark exactly of where you are in terms of are we actually meeting the infrastructure, the digital infrastructure side of things? And again, differentiate between the operational and the strategic investment. So while it's really important in terms of the strategic IT investment, which is crucial, the operational side of things, the internal investment, the people within the organization, while they work together, you also have to look at them very separately in terms of how are they working as their own entities, and again seek to gain from both types of the gains. What is it that you need to transition? So digital transformation leadership, again, just to quickly look at it, when we look at the processes, we look at is the processes that you're embedding within your organization, are they helping initiate the change, and are they help maintaining it? So this is where we look at, again, the change management side of things, which is crucial. And, are they actually helping you embed that particular change? If you look at the systems, again, is the IT infrastructure that you're currently operating within, again, is it helping you initiate the change? And if so, how? And if why not? If it isn't, why not? And again, the culture. So that everybody has the culture that they're open, there's transparency around that. And I think, some organizations, they're very open to change, but there can be the shift. And if you have the leadership, again, to bring you through the whole policy and the process, it will help, again, and with the people. Are people open to the change? Do they actually know what change needs to be employed? So just lastly on that, and I can go into any particular questions, really is around the change management side of things. So again, change can create an identity crisis. And I've been fortunate enough to work within organizations and primarily also the HSE, where over the last number of years, change was huge, and it can create this identity crisis. What about if I'm not good enough? What about if I don't have the tools? Will it fail? All of this type of change. And, managing people's aspects of change is crucial, and it's fundamental of, it has a great, will the actual digital transformation be successful at the end? And that is managing it, because I think there isn't many things that we can be assured of in life, but one thing that we currently can is that things will change. And, that change can be planned change, unplanned change, or something that's imposed upon us. And if you work from the latter and change is imposed, it does create that identity crisis. It does cause all of that, and helping working directly with the people involved affected by the change. So it's not just, a hierarchy sitting around the table, this is what we're doing and this is the change policy, and it's been, diluted down. Everybody that's been affected by the change needs to be on board with the change. They need to understand the change. They need to know how they're affected, also with the end user themselves, the customer. How are you operating within them? Do they appreciate the change? Do they understand? Are they involved? So it's really important along that particular area. And again, do they understand why the change? So, your whys, we always say start with the why. It has to be hugely important. Why are we actually going down this digitalization model? How will it improve? Well, why? It'll help you be more efficient in your job role. It will help you manage the solutions, the digital solutions that you're able to provide to your customers, which is really important. But also finding out from a personal point of view, what is the person that's actually working within the organization in a particular team? What's their why? What do they want to bring to the table? And again, building a change management process really overall, which is really important, because if we look at technology being implemented at a larger scale in organizations, perhaps even an IT infrastructure in a hospital environment, most times when the infrastructure fails, it's not the actual technology that failed itself. It was the expectations that came with it. So perhaps there was poor leadership. There was people not understanding the change. There was difficulty embedding the change. There was poor communication across the board. Whatever it is, and all of those points that I've just made there, everything that they have in common really is that they're all human problems, and they're human problems, not technical problems. And that's why it's really important that people understand that you are on a mission to transform your digital or your business model to become a more digital model, and that everybody is part of this process. and that, you know, if you don't have the tools, we'll provide the tools. If you don't have the experience, we'll make sure that you gain in-depth knowledge within the experience, and that you have somebody capable within your environment to make sure that communication is key. It is absolutely key with any sort of change, that everybody feels involved in the process within the organization, and of course the end user. You know, the experience from, as we say, if creating any sort of a model, and perhaps before a model has even been introduced into a hospital, they've done a huge amount of research and work to make sure that it was developed for perhaps the clinicians that use it, and also for the end user, that everybody has gone through the journey and there has been learnings throughout. So lastly, on that end of it, just to keep mindful of time, is next steps again is just to, when you think about designing your digital transformation strategy, I have test, learn and test. You know, there is no, if you have a blank canvas as a startup, fantastic, great, create the data-driven culture environment, create all of the digital tools and all of the strategies that we've looked at. But again, as an organization, take the time to test and learn and keep working within that growth engine strategy. So again, I know there was a lot packed into it and I've gone through it fairly quickly, but again, I'm sure we'll all agree that digital transformation is such a large area. It's such an innovative area and a really exciting area. And I hope that you've taken some key learnings from that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane. That was absolutely fascinating. And I think definitely I've absorbed the fact that this is a process, it's a journey. It's not something that can be done overnight. And I think that that is probably the difficulty that most companies face, is embarking on that journey. It's a huge step, and it has to be taken step by step after that. So we will definitely be doing more work on this, because it's absolutely essential for businesses. But we can see, after all, you know, after your very clear presentation on how much is involved, we can see why a lot of companies would be scared of this process. Yeah. So we'll look forward to working with you further in the future into breaking down the journey into smaller steps, so that we can help companies to embark on that process. Thanks very much for that, Diane.
Thank you, Sarah.
So we're going to take a short break now, folks, and we'll come back in 10 minutes. So if you would like to grab a cup of coffee, we'll say 7 minutes. We'll be back here at 11:20. Okay, thanks everybody. See you at 11:20.
Hi, Diane. Diane, are you still there?
Hi, Ken. How are you doing? Sarah here.
Sarah, hi. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi. I'm here.
Just might bring my slide. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'll leave you to talk. Yeah.
Yeah. We might just swap the slide. Bring up the next deck.
Sure. Sorry. I apologize. Yeah.
No. Yeah. Well done, Diane. That was good.
Looking forward to your presentation.
Oh, I don't know. We'll see.
I hope I didn't ramble on a bit too much.
No, it was good. It was almost like we were copying each other's homework. So I think it'll be good in terms of context.
Good. So you can work away. You can share your slides, Ken, can you?
Just trying to share there now.
Yep. Perfect.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Ken. So you're good to go.
Hi, Sarah. All set. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So we'll kick off in about a minute's time.
That's lovely. Thank you.
Okay. Now, hi everyone, welcome back. I hope you managed to grab a cup of coffee there, have a little break to yourselves. So now I'm going to hand you over to Ken McGrath, who's head of public sector sales with 3 Ireland. So a company that is no stranger to digital transformation and assisting other companies with digital transformation. So I'm going to hand you over to Ken, who's now going to do his presentation for us. Thank you, Ken.
Thanks, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. Anja, Diane, Sarah, Andy, thanks for the opportunity to participate this morning. A couple of observations that just jumps off from the page from listening on to the first presentations. One, it's great to have DConnect, working in an environment where we're connecting organizations, both large and small, within a digital community. There's such huge opportunity, I believe, that's just starting when you look at in the context of technology where we are today. 3 is very much at the forefront of 5G technology. You have presentations that relate to AI. We see the whole opportunity in terms of data lakes and the data opportunity and what that's going to present for us in the future. And I think as an SME or a startup organization, there is so much potential out there in terms of growth, and that the ambition is looking towards a global stage. We're no longer just being inward focused in terms of the island of Ireland, but having the ambition to be global is very exciting. Andy, I've been around the business for a while now as well, and just to have an ecosystem like this that is connecting partners, whether it's within the startup to academia to those large public sector organizations that do need assistance, it's great to have the European Connected Health Alliance to support that. Diane, just looking at your presentation as well, one thing that struck me is that it was almost we were cogging our homework. I guess you got into a lot of the detail around what does a digital framework begin to look like and how do you enable digital transformation. And one observation was that, well, it potentially could be daunting looking at the size and scope of it. And what I would hope to do today is maybe put some color on that to demystify some of it, just to share 3's experience of going through a digital transformation journey, but then also looking some best in breed and best in class in terms of public sector organizations in Ireland that have taken that digital transformation step. And they vary in terms of context, in terms of size and impact. In preparation for today, my digital career started back in 1998 when analog still existed and was a thing. I had a great career working for 2 companies, one called 3Com and the other was Nortel, but they don't exist anymore. Both have disappeared. And they would have been at the prime and the forefront of digital disruption back in the 90s around that time. So this whole digital transformation and the digital journey, it is critically important for organizations if they do want to survive into the future. So moving on. Sorry, move on. Problems. So in terms of agenda, I just want to cover off, an introduction to 3 Ireland. Some people in Ireland would be very familiar. We are, there is a global footprint. We're part of the CK Hutchison Group out of Hong Kong with telecommunication assets right across the world. But also there's a comprehensive portfolio of other products and markets that we serve into. Just recently, as the HSE were being hit with this ransomware attack, and as they're trying to find and migrate their way out of it, one thing that really popped up in terms of within a group of people that are socialized with, considering digital adoption versus digital transformation, and what's the difference and what does it mean for an organization. And I think that touches on some of the things that Diane was referring to in terms of if you're going through this digital journey. One is digital transformation, but how do you ensure the digital adoption, and what are the implications for you on that journey? 3 Ireland's digital journey, we went through a whole transformation. 3 acquired O2 in Ireland back in 2014. So you can imagine we have 2 existing assets that are existing. So it was inevitable that we'd have to bring those 2 organizations together to create one complete entity that give us one complete view of our customer. And there was a journey that we described as 3 vision was the enablement to that digital transformation journey of bringing those 2 organizations together. And then we have COVID-19, and we've seen through COVID-19, there's been a huge acceleration of digital transformation just by the nature of having to work from home. It forced organizations to think digitally. And we've seen COVID-19 have a huge impact right across the piece, right across the country. And we've even seen that in terms of how people are using mobile networks in terms of completing their day jobs. And one obvious thing is just what are the, it's conveniently 3, but, as we reflect on the projects that I'd highlight, there are 3 priorities for digital transformation that all organizations or as startups working into an organization going through a digital transformation journey that you should consider. So a quick introduction to 3. As you'd expect, we're a large telecommunications company. I'm obviously going to say we're the best telecoms mobile operator in Ireland. We have over 2 million subscribers, a huge extensive network of 2,232 masts with an investment of over 2 billion to date in our network infrastructure. We're seeing a very exciting time with the advent of 5G and the delivery of 5G services. And as a startup and looking at the ecosystem, I think 5G almost relates to something back into the mid-90s when we saw the explosion of all these internet startups. We're at an age now where we're going to have everything connected. Anything that can be connected will connect to the network. And we're going to see that around, in the IoT market share. So the Internet of Things. So anything that can be connected, being connected to the network is going to create all this new data. It's going to create all new insights. If you think of the healthcare environment with assisted living, we're seeing projects, people don't want to go into those nursing homes anymore. They want to maintain a level of independence. And one way to facilitate that is a digital enablement, a digital journey in terms of what connected solutions can you facilitate in their home environments that ensures, a positive care environment, and the duty of care is adhered to for those people wanting to live like that. So some interesting statistics around the IoT world. The GSMA, they report that there's going to be 24.6 billion devices that are going to be connected by 2025. That's huge, it's significant. So again, that's going to create a lot of opportunities within healthcare and within the SME environment. Couple of customers, obviously I'm on public sector focused, that's what I do. I focus on some of the organizations that would help drive digital change in Ireland. And I'm going to talk to the Garda Síochána, that's the police service in Ireland. The transformation that they've undergone in the last 24 months has been pretty exciting. The HSE, we're all aware they're in the spotlight for the wrong reasons at the moment, but they've gone through some significant change, and they've been on a digital transformation themselves. So they're coming from a place where serious lack of investment, underinvestment, created challenges as they continue to evolve. And then you see the top layers of government to be very active in supporting and delivering services to these organizations. So we're very proud to say that the Taoiseach is walking around with a 3 mobile phone. We have the money bags of the Irish government, Department of Public Expenditure Reform and Department of Finance. They're all good customers of 3. And of course, the revenue commissioners, where we always love to pay our taxpayer euros to. Again, also great customers of 3. We've been delivering services for those organizations for quite some time now. So I mentioned at the outset there, digital adoption versus digital transformation. And I guess this means different things for different people. I think we've been through an evolution over time of, we're all probably at a different phase of our digital adoption and digital transformation. I was just there talking with my kids, telling them about my job, describing about when I first started working with 3Com back in 1998. And my daughter's comment was, geez, Dad, that's so last century. And for a moment there, I felt really old that she continues to play, on her iPad and doing things that she most likes to interact on. So we definitely are on a journey, I think, in terms of digital transformation is one thing, but how do you get your users in terms of digital adoption? I think that's a critical consideration in any digital transformation journey. When you look at transformation in the first place, I guess you really got to ask yourself some questions of why you want to go on a transformation journey. And this feeds back into some of the points that Diane would have raised. And I think from any starting point, I guess you got to start with a baseline. So understanding where you are now, what is the problem, and why do you want to start a digital transformation journey? What is the problem or the opportunity you're trying to take advantage of, or is there something you're looking to avoid? And ultimately, where do you want to be? You want to get in the future. Obviously, you're looking to be in a better place. So just understanding that transformation is important. So Diane had a really good quotation in terms of our definition of what digital transformation was. Mine is slightly different. And as I looked at the public sector, it probably does relate to the replacement of manual and legacy systems for more advanced and digital ones. And ultimately, any digital transformation, the whole objective is really to drive greater efficiency, enable new capabilities, and ultimately better customer experience. But then digital adoption is about having the ability to actually use the new digital tools that you're enabling. And it's important that your target users start to adopt. So if you're pursuing a digital transformation without prioritizing digital adoption, success potentially could be a challenge. And again, in three, we've had our own experience of that. The three's digital journey started off back in about 2017, and was described as the three vision. So the three vision was, again, it was very interesting as an insider looking at three's approach in how you would adopt a roadmap to a digital transformation project. So this was sponsored very, from the top down. It was very clearly communicated across our organization of the reasons and, what the mission of this digital transformation was going to be. So, here you can see a quote. Went back through the archives just recently to try and understand what the three vision mission was all about. So ultimately, it's to ensure that three continues to be the leading, innovative, and cost-effective telecommunications provider, but now and into a digital future. So again, feeding back into Diane's slides, I think that was crystal clear, and that was understood, top down within our organization, and through any activities that we were pursuing within the business was living to this mission. Again, to bring that three vision mission to life, there was an element of gamification in sort of describing the journey of how we were going to transform digitally, and helping people within the organization of where we were in terms of the different phases of a digital enablement project. So you can imagine the scale and size of three coming together with O2. They're two big, large organizations. It's not going to be a simple transformation that changes overnight. It was very much a journey, and that brought the organization with us with different milestones, and we'd report on a regular basis on how we're doing against that journey. So again, it was that commitment internally, and then it created a halo effect in terms of how we engage with our customers, in terms of how we best facilitate our customers in giving them ultimately the best digital experience. So in terms of that digital journey and that digital transformation, what did it mean? So we saw, a significant activation around all the different channels of communication. It's really understanding your customer in terms of being able to communicate with them wherever they are, on whatever device they might be using, on whatever channel they might be using. And I guess it was critical that we were able to respond in real time in a contextual way, understanding, where they may have been on their customer journey at any point in time. They may have gone from a website, saw some devices or saw some tariffs that they're really interested in, and then that would trigger into a potential a web chat or a phone call. So being able to stitch that all together was really important in terms of understanding the digital experience of our customer, and creating a seamless experience was ultimately the objective. So Three Vision has gone live now for 2 years, and we've seen it's been a hugely positive impact for Three, and it's really impacted positively in terms of how we engage with our customers. Through the whole digital journey and digital transformation, March 2020, we saw the impact of COVID, and that really did change the way in terms how people consume services, how people live their daily lives. The work-life balance started to was different shades of gray, because your work environment was now your home environment, and it had a different requirement in terms of how you would do your job. So I think the drive from people working from offices into a home environment definitely did push us into a new digital transformation phase. And that was definitely evident across the public sector in terms of people that traditionally would not work in a home environment, having to all of a sudden work from home, presenting new challenges in terms of what are the applications, what are the services. From a 3 perspective, it was around the devices and the connectivity, and ensuring they had the best connected experience was really important. So we saw a huge transformation in terms of the way people worked. It also, I guess, had a social, community and social responsibility aspect to it as well. We saw the schools being impacted, and looking at the different demographics in the different areas of the country where students and school kids, we didn't want them to be affected or disconnected in any way because of a technology limitation, that we enabled 10,000 SIM cards with unlimited data to schools. So, enabling the ones that are most disconnected to get connected through the delivery of this service. And again, this is all facilitated on the back of this platform that we created in the back end that made this really seamless and easy to implement. Again, when you look to the other extremes, we talk about connectivity. When you're looking at remote working, Arranmore is a beautiful island off the coast of Donegal. I'd highly recommend, if you ever have the opportunity to come visit, you definitely do. Through this collaboration with the community on Arranmore with 3, it's now become a highly connected island. So much so they're advertising for people to come, and that they would sponsor people living there for a year, to relocate back onto the island. And we did have within the business center that was enabled on the island, that people that originally were based in New York, all of a sudden working with gigabit services from the island, being able to work as if they were in New York, but living in a beautiful landscape. So we're seeing this, the whole change of work culture and how our working lives can definitely dramatically change once you have the right connectivity solutions in place. What was also interesting from a connected health perspective, there was different people within the community, again, that were elderly, that we enabled sensors within the home. So there was one lady there, she likes her cup of tea. She'd have her regular cups of tea during the day. And through sensors, we could see the activity that, she was up, she was active, she was, moving around, she was switching the kettle on at 10 o'clock in the morning when she'd have her, when you'd expect her to have that cup of tea. And that was all, being able to communicate back to those people that might have a duty of care, just knowing that she was okay and connected. There was also somebody else who, again, an elderly man, he was in his mid-80s, that was getting treatment in Beaumont Hospital. So you can imagine the consequences of a journey from Arranmore, which is, again, the northwest of Ireland, having to get a boat onto the mainland and then traveling all the way down to meet his consultant in Beaumont Hospital. And it was a journey that could take anything 4 hours one way, which would be a great inconvenience. By enabling the GP service on the island, for those checkups and with the different sensors and connectivity solutions that we could enable, he didn't have to take that journey anymore. He'd go into the GP practice and he was able to do a video consult right there from the GP service on the island, which was a really great test case and use case of digital transformation in what was once a rural community that was in decline. We're now seeing is, it's being reinvigorated and life coming back to the island, all because of the digital fabric is being enabled in that environment. So there's a couple examples of what we've seen through the delivery of connected services and why it is, a fundamental building block for any digital transformation journey. Sometimes connectivity can get lost because we're always caught up in the sizzle and not the sausage. It's really important that you understand all the different component parts that impact on any digital transformation journey or framework. I thought it might be interesting just to share, as we've gone through COVID, what has been, sorry, just that side's come up, okay. Yeah, just how did the usage patterns on our network? We saw a huge transformation on the network where you can imagine within the urban centers, there would have been, lots of customer activity just by the nature of where people would be congregating, to all of a sudden to see the network being dispersed to remote locations to where people, where they lived, but then also how they started using the network differently. And it put different kind of, I wouldn't say stresses, because our network has always been really well architected. We understand the profile of our users, and it's best practice in terms of the way it has been constructed. But we can just see a migration in terms of what people are using their devices, what they're using connectivity for today. And it's always interesting when you see there's more video usage, there's more gaming usage. What impact does that have for how we deliver services, particularly in a rural setting, and we talk about the connected home, the connected patient. How do those people want to be interacted with? And we can see a changing demographic as people get older. They have certain ways of working today that they're definitely going to want that continued into the future. So we know video is becoming real. Look at the way that we're interacting today. But it's that interactive video and what experiences is that going to bring? So you can just see around streaming video, I guess you'd expect some of this in terms of, people consuming more Prime Video, YouTube, Netflix, Disney Plus. I know I've got I think I've got 3 of the 7 that are there. Again, your audio services, and then just the new voice over IP and software services that people are using. So these are just I thought it'd be interesting from, I guess, a startup perspective, or just how people want to be engaged with and how they communicate. And how have we been doing? This is only 3 broadcast side, I'm going to say, but we've gone through significant transformation, as I've said. We've made huge investments on our network, and the landscape in Ireland is highly competitive. It's inches, not yards, in terms of the way we compete with some of our competitors. We have really accelerated the 5G journey, the 5G transformation on the island of Ireland. And we're really proud, to get that recognition from independent tests that are out there. That just ensures that, people get the best connectivity when they need it to enable a digital service of whatever type they may choose to consume. So I mentioned COVID and just what the impact that has had on digital transformation. And one thing that springs to mind, this is the only time you'll ever see a Winston Churchill presentation or picture from myself, but I had to go do a fact check on this one. I wasn't sure, was this fake news or was this really attributed to Winston Churchill? But never let a good crisis go to waste. And it is true. It was when he was trying to establish the UN post World War II. This was a quote that's attributed to him. As we've journeyed through COVID-19, and thankfully the end is in sight, we definitely have seen, aspects of digital transformation that have been accelerated by COVID-19. And I think it was forced, and it was also a necessity. It had to happen. There was no way that as a country, as businesses, enabling services, that we could have survived if we didn't have digital services and digital enablement to facilitate that. And again, we've seen that. You saw the slide regarding, how people were using their mobile devices to be able to continue to work and try and maintain a normal work-life balance. So with that in mind, I just, never let a good crisis go to waste. Back in 2015, the Office of the Government CIO, they published, their digital transformation strategy. It was more of an ICT strategy, but it does lead into, what you would expect in terms of any digital transformation journey. So first being built to share, it had to be digital first, data as an enabler, improve governance and increase capability. And again, that's to enable a shared experience across all the different constituents within public sector, being able to, get the best of a digital fabric being enabled across the island of Ireland. And one thing is that one of the baselines for that transformation was government networks enabled a government cloud network. So connectivity was never going to be a barrier to the adoption of digital services. And we've seen some fantastic projects come to life, as a consequence of this digital transformation strategy. So there's one real important one that 3 have been involved in. And I just, again, to share, some personal experience of a digital transformation journey of an organization. We mentioned at the outset around the HSE and just some of the challenges that's been unfortunate in terms of how they've been impacted, but it hasn't all been bad. So there was a service that was introduced a number of years ago. It was called @healthmail.ie. So what is Healthmail? What's healthmail.ie? So it's more than just a platform, it's more than just an email service. It is a platform for collaboration and communications. It's something that we've constructed with our partners in MJ Flood and with Microsoft that enables a collaboration service for all healthcare practitioners that may sit outside the HSE. So that's all your GPs, your physiotherapists, your pharmacists, your nursing homes. This is a closed, secure communications environment that enables collaboration across those entities back into the HSE. And there's a couple of things around this that's proven to be critical as we've worked through both through the pandemic, but also through the recent ransomware attack. And some of this is just understanding the customer, and you can see this. It's really having a belt and braces service proposition that wraps around the component parts of what this platform is. One is providing simplicity and ease of use when you're, for users registering and getting on board. And again, there's multiple factor authentication and everything from a security aspect that you would consider is incorporated as part of that onboarding experience. It's highly secure. It survived the recent ransomware attack. And again, the reason for that is it's a bounded service. It's a secure, closed environment that enables communication across the different constituents of users on the platform. But then we put a 24/7 service model with a 4-hour response to ensure that users, if they have a challenge or an issue, that we're there to help and support them. And it's done really well. Again, to put some color on that, why do I talk about Healthmail? So the first iteration of Healthmail, we were managing about 30,000 messages per month. There was about 6,000 mailboxes, but it was based on an on-premise solution. So we had a physical capacity constraints in terms of how that was going to scale. But thankfully, just prior to COVID hitting, that we were on a migration journey of bringing this to cloud. And I guess this is something to consider in any digital transformation is, on-premise versus a cloud solutions and weighing up the pros and cons of each. We've definitely benefited through, that cloud migration. And you can see that just by the nature of messages per month. It's gone from what was 30,000 to 1 million messages per month. In terms of being able to turn on capacity, because it's flexible and dynamic, we have no constraints in terms of turning up mailboxes. And if we need to turn it down, we can do that as well. It works in both directions. So it's very much a consumption model. And even the speed on which we can turn on services, we over the space of 10 days, we saw migration and enablement of over 7,000 mailboxes. I think that number is up to about 10. So again, the type of services that are being enabled, it's around e-prescribing. If there was, GP communications with hospital environments, this was all facilitated within that platform. So I think
Can we just ask you to wrap it up there, Ken, within like 1 minute? Great, thanks.
1 minute, lovely, thank you.
Yeah.
There you go, I'm out of practice. Very quickly, for people in Ireland, the Connected Guards, the Guards have been through a digital transformation strategy. So again, an organization that had suffered from lack of investment. So what we've seen is a huge transformation in terms of how they've delivered services. They consulted with their users. And again, it's just an example of digital transformation and digital adoption in action, where they're using a mobile phone to do all the police checks that you'd expect at the side of a road, where before that service wasn't available to them. So 3 priorities for digital transformation. Starting with the end user in mind, you might be familiar with this already, where you design a footpath, but people take a shortcut and they go the other way. So it's ultimately having the user experience in mind. Security is critical. We've seen that through our own implementation of digital transformation, but also through Healthmail and what the Guards have gone to deliver. And then understanding your weakest link, whether that's connectivity or understanding the environment in terms of what you're enabling from a digital transformation perspective, but taking in all considerations. And I guess you really need to be aware of the risks of unintended consequences. We've seen how the HSE have been impacted because of the ransomware attack. Users not being able to get critical services. We're seeing the publication of patient data onto the web, and ultimately it's been a real challenge to try and get services back up and running because of the impact of the ransomware attack. So that's it with me. Hopefully that was of some interest, and thanks for the opportunity to talk to you today.
Thanks very much, Ken. I'm straight up, so I'll go into my. If you could stop sharing there, Ken, I'll pop up my presentation. Thanks a million. So where are we? Yeah, here we go. So I'll go fast because I know that the next speaker is on. He's a bit time limited, so just give me a shout out if I go over lengths, no problem at all. But I'll try to be quite quick. So my name is Dermot Doyle. I'm the CEO of Denacure at Sarl. Can everybody see my presentation?
Yeah.
Excellent, great. So what I'm going to try and do here is give the perspectives from an SME into this. So digital transformation tends to be quite large and led by large firms and often desired by large organizations as well, but not only that, as was pointed out earlier. So a little bit about myself. We were spun out from the Luxembourg Institute of Science and Technology, which we know as LIST. We just launched last month, so it's an exciting time for us. And we've got 2 formal pilot trials happening right now and requests for several more in the pipeline, which is really great. Before that, and including this point of time as well, I've been focused on business generation. So I've been doing a lot of sales, and I've done over 100 million of service contracts, particularly for the European institutions. I've got my fingers crossed that that might jump by 30% this year, because I was involved in another large one just prior to launching the company. And I'm going to base some of my subjects today that I'm speaking about on this kind of experience of launching a company from, let's say, the research environment, but also my experiences on the PhD Hub, which was effectively advising other research organizations to do the same thing, and also working with them. So I've been working with the academic environment for a while. And what I want to do quickly is I want to do a shout out to my business partner. I realized when I was listening to the other organizations that I should probably explain what Accurate actually does. I won't linger on this too long, but this is the point here is what the technology does is it manages formal terms and vocabularies in knowledge graphs, which is effectively linked data. But one of the big problems historically in healthcare was interoperability of data. And I'll just briefly go through this. So on the left-hand side, you'll see a scenario where you might have two organizations, could be two hospitals, or it could be two departments of the same hospital. One is using Medra, the other is using SNOMED CT. And there's a link between the terms thoracic pain and chest pain. And it's machine readable, so the systems on each side know what the other record is saying. The problem is that these terms evolve, because as we, COVID was not originally called COVID. It had to be given a name, and then it became COVID-19, and there was a lot of different evolution around the term COVID. I think there was something like 19 different terms that were formally used at one stage. What happens is if you have a knowledge graph, or again, as they link data to make it easier to understand, when these clinical terms change, if you're not remapping them all the time, what will happen is you will lose continuity with the older records. And this is hugely problematic. And it also means that you have to map, if you're pushing the data through, possibly cross-border or to another institution, and you want to keep it machine readable, then you constantly have to be remapping. And on the right-hand side, you'll see thoracic pain, chest pain, the term in SNOMED CT became pain of truncal structure. And that is not the easiest phrase for a computer to understand. So, and the point on research and why we need research so much on the, to the kind of fuel the economy and fuel efficiency is the algorithms which were required to read this, part of which were created by my partner, Dr. Cardoso. They took 7 years and over 1.3 million to build. So on the surface, what you're seeing there might seem like a very kind of simple thing. Oh, okay, well, we'll just use Excel or something like that. No, it's not. This has been one of the biggest problems in healthcare interoperability. And it's been solved now. And that's why we're really excited about the technology. But my point here is not so much about my company. It's why you need to bring research to the market, because the public funds are needed to have young, bright minds create these solutions. And then they have to go into the market for them to benefit society. And that's what I think we're all about here today. Okay, so digital transformations relevant to startups. So, this is something, as I said earlier, that normally, we think of these things often led as large change processes taken on by large organizations. Because if it's a small change process, it's generally not so sensitive. But if it's a large one like digitization in a sensitive area like medical health, it's a big one. So, and small and micro companies almost never lead these, at least not in my experience. You might get the exception if you have a small company which is composed of maybe a number of partners who have 20 or 30 years experience each in a very specific area, possibly like cybersecurity. Then they're the sort of people you'd want to lead. But typically you will get a large company leading it, and that is due to the, it's due to a bias actually, which you will get against smaller companies. And this is something that SMEs and startups need to be aware of. And it's something I'll come back to later in this presentation. Large companies have a bias towards other large companies, because if the project goes wrong, they expect a large company to bail it out. But if the project goes wrong and it's a small provider and it was a very sensitive project, that small provider can go bust. And that's the way they see it. It's not necessarily like that, but that is how the organization tends to see it. So when you know that, and then of course for public procurement as well, you might just be ruled out based on not having much track record, et cetera, et cetera. So having said all of that, are digital transformations relevant to startups? And the answer is unequivocally yes. And we've had comments earlier, which I was really delighted to hear from Andy when he talked about large companies looking for this innovation, and also from Diane as well. And it really backs up. I was really quite happy to hear those comments because it really is what I found in my experience as well. Okay, so again, speaking to the young entrepreneurs, getting out of the lab and into the market. You don't actually have to be a spin-off. You know, you can just, you know, leave the institution, go off and do your own thing. It's really a matter of judgment. It's how you want to do it. What I would say is if you're going to be a spin-off from a research institution, and this I'm sure is very much the case for Dundalk, so you've got a lot of advantages, right? You've got pre-existing relationships with the public sector, because typically the institution, if they've been doing research in a particular field, they've often, sometimes they may have actually come from other parts of the public sector, sometimes they've gone in there, or they tend to know people. So you'll get senior researchers who have larger networks, and hopefully they're opening those up for the young researchers, particularly useful if you're dealing with a hospital and also large corporates as well. So having those networks in place through the institution can give the spin-off that network immediately, right? And that is not something to be sniffed at, because the institution also may need, and typically more and more does need this for European funding, is to be working with either the private sector or other public bodies such as hospitals, civil service, etc., to do research projects which are to have an impact. So like the RIA in the H2020. So my advice is make sure get on that ship, you know. Then you benefit from the branding of research or institution, because when you go to market, you'll be saying, well, you know, my name is, you know, X or Y, and I'm representing company X or Y. No one's ever heard of you, but they'll have heard of Dundalk, so that's brilliant, you know, or locally they heard of List. So that's immediately giving you credibility, because they know it's not something cooked up in a garage. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. But the perception is, okay, this has had some money go into it in advance via the research. Okay, so, and then you benefit from the research capacity institution as well, because it's an SME, you can't do everything, you know, but you might find that the institution is there as a partner for consulting or consortia bids and things like that. And then hopefully you can get some support in terms of infrastructure, office space, et cetera, et cetera. So we've had all of these benefits in Luxembourg. I thoroughly recommend any young researchers who are willing to like go off and do their enterprise to absolutely, you know, pursue this as well locally. Okay, lessons learned, and I'm basing this on our experience launching a company, but also my experience on the PhD Hub. So we had a lot of young researchers doing things like hackathons and putting ideas out there to be judged. So for the institution, I would say clear terms from the outset. So if researchers come to you and they want to be entrepreneurs, show them the roadmap straight away. Don't have any ambiguity, or try to lessen the ambiguity. That can be difficult, because I do understand that the larger the organization, the more decision makers there are involved, and you generally have to keep a lot of them happy, and they do have valid points of view. But that really should be, let's say, managed by the single point of contact. So you don't want to be sending the young entrepreneurs from Billy to Jack, you know, because that will exhaust them. The other thing to do is to commit, you know, because then the entrepreneurs really understand, okay, this institution is behind us, okay? So we can ask questions. We don't, you know, if there's something we don't know, we don't have to be scared that someone will see that. We can ask, and we can be helped possibly in an answer. Speed to market. This is a big challenge for any large organization, because the larger they are, the more difficult it is for them to move quickly. But it is certainly in the technology sphere, the digital sphere, you really do have to go quickly, because digital innovations can get stale very fast. So the institution really needs to understand that and push, or at least help the project get to market as fast as they possibly can do it. Okay. And the last thing I would say for the institution is like, don't make a meal of it, which means like don't have too many people involved. I mean, sure, you'll have a lot of stakeholders, but don't make them decision makers, you know, and when you have clear terms and when you have clear criteria, you don't need to do that. Everybody kind of agrees those, and then you have latitude on that. For the entrepreneurs, so feel the fear, do it anyway. This is a big question, I think, particularly for people who are at, let's say, around the, you know, who are holding doctorates or postdocs, because they may want to develop a career in academia. And frankly, it will be very, very difficult to juggle a startup enterprise with an academic career, right? And you may have to make a choice between the two. There may be some people out there who can do both, and fantastic for them. It would be a lot to take on, in my opinion. But if you are committed to going out and having your own business, just go for it. Just go for it. And the younger you start at, the better, because even if you fail, you will not regret having done it, you know, because that's how you learn. Know your market. And this is something where I'd suggest people, it's amazing, you know, people can do a huge amount of research and reading, but they won't pick up a few books by entrepreneurs, you know, and learn from their mistakes. It only costs you a little bit of money. Do that, learn from them, and then also learn the market for your technology. And that means, you know, if you can, call up a few people in it, you know. 20 years ago, when we were trying startups, myself and some friends, you didn't have social media, you didn't have LinkedIn, you know, you had to get to people through like telephones. Organizations didn't show their senior management team on their website so much. And it was very difficult to generate a network. It's not like that now. And one of the best things you can do is kind of look for people who've worked in the industry that you're targeting, possibly if they're retired. Maybe if not, they might just give you 30 minutes at a time, and ask them for help. And the 4 Ps I would recommend: be patient, persistent, professional, and positive. Patient, because when you're launching a startup, there's a lot of other people involved, especially on the institution side, in relationships that have to be taken care of. Be persistent, don't stop. Be professional, and your attitude and how you do things. You do things on time as well. Also, you know, feel the burn and be have that in mind, and be positive in your outlook. You know, so do make a deal of it. Try a lot of things, but remember those 4 Ps. Okay, winning your partners and clients. How am I doing for time, guys?
You're doing okay, Dermot. I think you have about 5 minutes left.
Okay, okay. So winning your partners and clients. So you're going to have these problems, and there's a link later which I hope will be useful to people. But leverage your relationship with your parent institution. I touched on that before. Seek out larger firms already active in the sector and work with them. Consortia, you can go to consortia, you can go be a subcontractor, you can be a licensee, you can license your technology to them. That's been raised already today. It was touched on by Andy. He was absolutely right in the stuff that he said on that. Consider advisory board members who are ex-industry and the goodwill that they can give you, and then look into the funded programs. In short, try everything. You know, you're going to push the market. It's not easy. Everybody's selling, but you can do it. And now here's some extra resources, and I'll dwell on this a little.
Dermot, can I make that 3 minutes?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Okay. So for selling to the public sector and regarding health services transformation, I have 2 articles on LinkedIn. The first one is about entering the public sector market in general, but also leads to the health sector. Do read that. It says basically a lot of the things I've touched on here today, but it's in more detail, and it gives a rationale as well. For the EU thing, and this is what I will finish on, the EU has an awful lot of funding for entrepreneurs, but you really have to go and dig it out. And the best way to do that is to track down the annual program, which is from the agency itself. In this case, it should be for entrepreneurs, it should be ASME, which is the European Agency for Small and Medium Enterprises. Now, the thing at the moment is there's some money left in their old program, but as I think many people will know, the Commission started a new 7-year program, has an absolutely massive budget around it, including for health. And that's going to be distributed. You will only see how that's going to be spent in the coming, I would say, 12 months. And they will lay it down in the annual program. And then you're going to see if that money is going to go into research, if they're going to buy something, or if they're going to fund one of the agencies. And as I said, ASME is the key one to look for. In my presentation, there are 2 links there, and there's an example of one of the annual programs. That is the goal document, okay? So those are the let's say, the helpful links, which I'd like to give to the researchers and anybody else here today as well, which can help you navigate we could say public administration at European level. And that's it from myself. And if there's any young researchers who'd like any advice from me, do reach out. Don't forget the 4 Ps. And now I'll close because I do understand that our next speaker is on a tight timeline. So thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, Kuno, you're on. Thank you very much, Dermot.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Kuno. I'm from Denmark, working with digital transformation in the healthcare sector. And I'm going to talk to you about, and just have to share my screen. I'm going to talk to you about a project we made in Denmark about patients with COPD and home monitoring. Can you all see my screen now?
Yes,
Yes,
we can.
can also see your notes as well, Kuno. You just
Trying to get it different. Just a second.
Yeah, we can see your presentation now.
So, as I told you, I'm going to take my starting point in this project with home monitoring of patients with COPD. It all started in the northern part of Denmark. I'm now placed in the southern part of Denmark, but I've been working with this project for the last 8 years or something like that. It was called Telecare North. It was the biggest full-scale tele home care project in Denmark ever. The project have, within the reality of financial structures, legal issues, and the complexity of an integrated healthcare system, faced and found solutions which are now up and running in the northern part of Denmark, and soon they'll be up and running in all of Denmark. The project was only possible due to opportunities for digital transformation that presented themselves and which were utilized in the project. In a Danish context, the driving force for digitalization and rethinking healthcare is the population growing older. The risk of chronic disease and the need for healthcare services increases with age, as we all know. And this combined with lifestyle means that we see an alarming growth in chronic diseases such as COPD, heart failures, diabetes, and a lot of other. Facing this requires some innovative thinking in order to make better use of the resources allocated to healthcare services and use of technology, not just as a supplementing component driving expenses, but as the enabler of disruption and rethinking the way we deliver healthcare. Securing equal right and access to healthcare services and bridging to rural areas far away from basic and specialized healthcare facilities. So as you can see in this PowerPoint, a lot of the expenses in Denmark are spent on these patients. And just to give you the numbers, there are 5 million people in Denmark. Between 300,000 and 400,000 Danes suffer from COPD. It kills about 3,700 Danes every year, and 10% of all healthcare costs in Denmark are spent on treatment and prevention of COPD patients. So this is it's really important for the sector that we kind of do something about this problem. It all started out with some small pilot trails and some research projects within the University of Aalborg. These small research projects kind of showed the reduction in admission and readmissions and the patient's need for healthcare services delivered by the municipalities. So we needed more evidence. It was needed to verify that the results shown in these first small projects would be also reachable in a full-scale project and within normal operation in the healthcare system. So Telecare North is an example of Denmark moving from research and pilot trails to a large or full-scale operation. And the project also led to, according to the last speaker, this also led to the construction of a few new companies or startups that helped us through this digital transformation that we were trying to utilize. So, what we was very concerned about was that we didn't want to digitize anything for the sake of digitalization. So it's very important that there's a higher purpose than just initiating digital transformation for the sake of change. There need to be something more than that. So please remember to be 100% clear about the purpose and the expected benefits of the digital transformation. Who are going to gain out of it? Is it the patients? Is it the company, the startup? Who's going to gain out of it? And remember that there are also challenges and a lot of negative side effects that needs to be addressed and articulated whenever you start up a process like this. That's very important. So, as I told you before, Clinical North started out in 2011-12 with COPD, designing kind of a concept for collaboration between the municipalities, the hospitals, the general practitioners, deciding on technologies. And in 2013, we enrolled almost 1,300 patients with COPD in a randomized controlled cluster trial. And due to the results of this research project and the experience, a political decision was made in 2015 to adopt telemedicine as a permanent service in all of the region of northern part of Denmark. The Danish model is typically to work from small pilot projects via large-scale testing, proving your business case as the gateway to the national deployment. In doing so, we fail fast and move forward, eliminating not viable concepts, while still at a low cost level. It's not that expensive when you do it that way. And through large-scale testing, we achieve systematic, collected and documented experiences on the effect of the treatment, the quality of the service, the workflows, the economic incentive structures, as well as shifts in tasks and burdens between different healthcare providers. So in the process, we reveal and solve legal and technical challenges as well. So there's lots of challenges to be overcome, but that's the way it is in projects like this. We also took in heart failure at a point and made this project even cover heart failure patients as well. Yes, as I told you, the journey started out in 11-12 with COPD, designing this concept for collaboration. And then we went to 2016 and we had kind of these annual financial agreements between the government and the municipalities and regions in Denmark. And in 2016, they kind of wrote this kind of projects into the political system. Again, in 2018, they did the same, and now they talked about telemedicine and home monitoring in Denmark as a thing everybody should be able to do in the coming years. In the designing of the intervention, there were some guiding principles. First of all, we wanted one joint cross-sectoral service to take place. The aim was to avoid creating a parallel healthcare system. There was a big focus on integrated care in the sense of coordinated care, where we communicate, share data across sectors. We acknowledge that the fact that these patients with chronic diseases, and more often more than just one disease, experience an often very fragmented system. So the vision was, and still is, that the patients should experience their contact with the system as coordinated and very coherent. And the other important principle was that we emphasized the importance of creating an intervention where patient empowerment was at focus. We really have to enable the patients to live with a chronic disease and manage the disease and gain competences to do so. So that they will react in time on changes in their condition. We can kind of handle that. Yes, whatever works for the patient, very important. Patient empowerment, as I told you. We had a principle of organizing after the lowest effective cost level. We didn't want it to be big and shiny, but effective. And whenever it was possible, we were using existing organizations and existing workflows in the healthcare system. There's a lot of device choices when you do something like that. You can choose a consumer device. The market changes very rapidly, so you can enjoy the innovation without being the driver of innovation yourself. The price is low. You are forced to follow the market, although, so that could be the downside of that. There's a quality level. A lot of consumer devices on the market buy at your local supermarket or wherever you buy it. Using devices in healthcare, you need to have a certain quality level. So you need to be aware of that. Devices may work on healthy individuals, but patients do not necessarily have normal readings, and therefore quality needs extra attention when you go with these kind of things. There's a big question about bring your own device as well. You need to think very carefully about that. What's the target group? Are they able to do bring your own device? And what again about the quality of the devices they bring? Are they efficient? Are they good enough for whatever they're needed for? Bluetooth, again, the prices goes up whenever you need Bluetooth, but both on your device and on the need for integration in your software. And there's a rise of complexity. And then there are special patient needs. For instance, we found out in our project that we needed to give the patients a pen because they had cold fingers, so they couldn't use the tablet without a pen. Something we didn't consider before we started, but kind of found out when we started. We had a lot of feedback from the healthcare professionals on this. They were very, very happy about it. They could interact with an increased number of patients. They could have this good dialogue with the patients. They found a lot of secondary effects when they talked to the patients and they read their oxygen support and stuff. They could increase the patient's empowerment while talking to them. They could speak to other professionals and they kind of were acknowledged by the general practices as new competent partners because these nurses really got specialists in their area. So, although, and then on the side of that, we of course educated them a lot, gave them a lot of new tasks and competences in the program. The patients were very happy as well. All of them found telemedicine and home monitoring very easy to use. Many of these patients actually were over 90 years old. The last big thing on the technology front in their homes was then when they 20 years ago kind of shifted out their old phone with a phone with buttons instead of the old wheel thing. And then they went directly from there to an iPad. But actually these elderly people found it very easy to use. So it's not, there's no reason to be afraid of that people can't use technology when you go through a digital transformation. If it's only made correct and easy, everybody can use it. So yes, they all found that the mobility of the solution was a hit. It enabled them to bring the tele kit, the stuff with them. on holiday, and when they went to the summer house or when they went to visit their children in the other end of the country, they could take things with them. They could, without no problem, use it and take it with them, and they didn't need to go to the hospital or something like that. So do not believe that elderly and ICT need beginners is the main challenge. It's a question of just making it user-friendly. Hardware, interfaces, everything. In fact, the patient and the network around the patient is a key resource and the key to success in projects like this. We had the University of Aalborg following the project, and they found a lot of things. They found out that the results are quality, adjusted life years, and patient empowerment. There was a high effect on quality in this project. There was a cost reduction, a 9% decrease in hospitalization, and a 20% decrease in the length of the stay when they were at the hospital. So Telecare North was not just about new technology, but also about using technology to reinvent processes of long-distance services that allow data to follow the patient and be shared among the different operators, sectors, and professionals involved in the patient's care and treatment. Therefore, one major benefit of Telecare North is that it allows us to perform healthcare tasks at the lowest efficient cost level. For instance, the GP or a municipal nurse can perform tasks that previously required an outpatient visit or hospitalization. So Telecare North designed kind of solutions and adapted them into the complexity of an integrated healthcare system. Solutions are now in running operations in the north part of Denmark and soon in the rest of Denmark, as I told to you earlier. Yes. What are the elements of the implementation? Yes, I mean, there are this joint development of telemedicine. There's joint development of the infrastructure and the solutions. This is where some of the new startups were helping developing the solutions. The health professionals have a lot of efforts and working on guidelines. There is a lot of service support and logistics around the matter of getting the iPad and the stuff out to the patients, deliver it to them. So there's a lot of companies involved in that as well. They are delivering and they are preparing the kit that is going home to the patients. There's a lot of education and skills, which again implements a lot of startups who help us kind of make these e-learning programs and stuff. And there's all the technical setup, which again needs somebody to help. So the telemedicine infrastructure, of course, all the technical elements must be in place. It's been a long journey with common national development of the system and the decision on cross-cutting operations. The infrastructure can be understood as a digital highway where the data flows between the solutions. The common infrastructure, which is the dot in the middle, sorry, this is not in English, can be used by several different employee solutions and citizen solutions. So other disease areas can also be connected later. It's not only COPD and heart failure, there'll be another one. There is an employee solution. This is the part where of the solution where the healthcare professionals have to work, and there's kind of the citizen solution, which is the part of the solution where the citizens must use for questionnaires and submission of measurements and data. This flowchart provides an overall picture of how the effort is going and who is doing what. And as you see, there are a lot of people involved, but the digital tools act kind of as the lubricant that makes the effort work even better. The goal in the part of Denmark where I'm situated right now is that 80% which is about 1,800 patients. I expected to get on this system by the spring of 2022. 59% or so of those included will be seen by the monitoring manager, nurse in the municipality, and will not have to go to the hospital as often as they did before. All of the equipment we are using is purchased and distributed from the municipalities and paid for via a distribution key. So I'm coming nearer to my end of my thing. Digital first is not what we strive for. Staying at home is. This calls for solutions like telemedicine, home monitoring. We want to diagnose and treat patients, all kinds of patients at home. Hospitalization is in the future for the few that really need to be in the hospital. The home will at some point be the most important healthcare setting. High quality treatment does not necessarily require a physical meeting. In many cases, telemedicine solutions in the homes can give equal or higher quality of treatment and quality of life. The patients can remain in their own homes without having to visit the hospital for frequent but often simple checkups. At the same time, it's really reducing costs. Telemedicine empowers patients, allowing them to play an important part in their treatment and care. And if you can monitor your own lung capacity, access your own health data, and talk to the doctor in your own living room, why waste time waiting in a hospital bed or driving to the hospital? So we expect patient empowerment to become a popular demand, gradually becoming a basic right for patients in Denmark. Therefore, we need to rethink and disrupt our interaction with the patient using telemedicine and digital transformation to create a paradigm shift to a more patient-oriented healthcare system. We need to offer treatment focused on the patient's individual needs and incorporate the patient's resources in the treatment. So the use of technology and telemedicine implies that data is used and shared across healthcare providers. This, of course, comes with the need of data security and privacy. In Denmark, we are aware of the risks connected to using and sharing personal data in healthcare. The threat is that personal and private information is disclosed or leaked. It's a risk we take serious, but it must not stop us from using data to develop better treatments and better healthcare systems altogether. So we all have the responsibility to use the tools available to save lives and to ensure healthy citizens to the best of our ability. And we are determined in Denmark to use the digital opportunities to achieve this goal. So that's why digital transformation is so important, and that's why we use it. Thank you. I think that was what I wanted to say right now.
Thank you very much for that, Kuno. Absolutely fascinating and very interesting, actually, to hear the journey that you have come on and to find out those facts about the Danish medical system. I'm going to bring in our other speakers now for a fireside chat, and I have made lots of notes while you were all talking and have loads of questions, so I'm looking forward to getting those answered. I'm just going to bring in our other speakers. Okay, hi everyone, you're welcome back.
Hi.
How you doing?
So I'm going to go straight to something that a few of you have mentioned, which is around the population aging and elder care being, you know, a priority and a very good reason to digitalize healthcare. At the end of the day, if we're going to have a quarter of our population being over 65 within the next 20 years, it's a very good reason to prioritize that segment of the population and to plan for that. And I just wondered, Because actually in DConnect, we have a project running at the moment where we are looking at digital, inclusion to see how digital inclusion as a social tool, not even as a medical tool, but as a social tool can improve healthcare, and we would hope to quantify the reduction in the cost of healthcare as a result. So I'm going to come first of all to you, Ken. You talked there, you kind of briefly touched upon digital health for older people as a project that 3 is working on. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that and tell us what 3 is involved in that area?
Yeah, it's interesting listening to the other speakers, because I guess they're practitioners of the more medical and sort of the science of the healthcare requirements that are needed by these people. From a 3 perspective, it's really enabling the connectivity, because ultimately everything depends on being connected. To Kuna's point, towards the end, it's one, it has to be digitally secure, it has to be safe. And then I guess there's timeliness in terms of the availability of information, in terms of whatever needs to be communicated is communicated in a timely manner. So for 3, it's really the beauty of mobile technology. It's very quick to turn on. With our 5G infrastructure, we're getting high broadband speeds that, there's almost an assumption that when you go into an elderly person's house, they're going to have broadband service or they're going to have a Wi-Fi service. I know in one example where there's a CPAP startup, and they're being challenged where they're going into a house, it's an elderly person, and there is no connectivity. So they're challenged in terms of how they get that the comms back into their application. So, some simple broadband, mobile broadband enables that. And then it's just the services that wrap around that. So yeah, long answer. Just like my long presentation, I'm out of practice on some of these timings. It's one thing I'm going to have to pick up.
And I was very, very interested in the Aaron Moore project. As a Donegal woman, I love that Aaron Moore project. And as a marketing person, I think the marketing around it is beautiful. I also happen to know some of the individuals personally who are involved in the digitization project.
Yeah, it's something we're very proud of. Yeah, it was great. Great project.
It's a wonderful project. And I suppose getting the technology into older people's hands, and as you said, you can't presume that older people have access to broadband. Can I ask you, is that a social project for, do you have a social agenda around that? Would it be part of your CSR agenda?
Yeah, it's mixed. So through COVID, yes, there was a social agenda for where there was requirements in those, where there's populations that had requirements that we did support. For others, there's, the HSE and the Office of the CIO within the HSE, they have these innovation projects where it gets funded. So we had lighthouse projects around the country. So there's the Living Labs within Sligo was a collaboration with Sligo County Council, the HSE, 3, Amazon Web Services, enabling the ECHO. And ultimately that was about providing, it was a social project in terms of people that were stuck in the home in rural Ireland, but enabling an ECHO to have some collaboration. And to Kuno's point as well, it's that digital connection. It's not just about, it's not health diagnosis, but it's, in some of the mental problems, it's connected and loneliness, overcoming those challenges, and how you enable technology for someone for good in that context. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And Kuno, you did talk about the cost of say the cost of the lack of digitalization there, digitization, and the cost of COPD to the Denmark budget. It's actually astounding that 10% of the healthcare budget is spent on COPD. Is that something that's common across the across other countries, or is that something specific to Denmark?
No, that's not especially specific to Denmark. I think it's a very, very expensive group of patients, these COPD patients. So I guess when you look to Ireland or England or anywhere else, it will look similar, something like that. And if I just can get back to you, Ken, you talked about broadband and how you can use things and how you can do stuff. In our project here, we actually decided not to use broadband. We decided to develop everything so we could do it via the SIM card in the iPad, and that actually went fine. It was no problem because if we had to install broadband in all these elderly people's houses, it would be kind of a project and it would be very expensive. So we actually developed the system so it worked on SIM cards only.
Very good. Yeah. So ultimately, I would interpret that as almost like a different flavor of broadband. You're using the capability of a device. It's a SIM card that's going to connect to a mobile broadband service. So, you know, having good, I assume it's 4G service, and if 5G is there, it's a bonus. And it does come back to this, anything that can be connected will be connected, and that will depend on the likes of a SIM card. So, yeah.
And actually, we do have a device in Ireland based in Dundalk Institute of Technology. At the risk of being accused of cronyism, I'm going to give them a shameless plug. They're called Acorn, and they have a SIM on their tablet, and they find that for the same reason that it works very well. Another thing that we have come across is poverty in this area, that the cost of broadband is expensive, and it can be cost prohibitive for older people to get connected to broadband. I wanted to talk as well about adoption versus transformation. Is that a carrot versus stick approach? I'm going to come to you there, Dermot. Do you have you found that? I suppose, do you have to have a carrot and stick approach here? One of the things that I was thinking while I was, mulling over that as you were talking, is that deadlines can help with carrot and stick approach. If we look at GDPR in 2018, MDR in 2021, you have to become compliant when there's an impending deadline, compliance deadline. And I'm just wondering, we have a deadline coming up in 2030, the EU Digital Compass, where the EU expects all patient records to be available electronically. Is that something that's on your radar? And do you think that's going to be key to the next round of funding in the EU?
Short answer is yes. The second thing I would say for the longer answer is we haven't seen anything yet. And I'll explain why. The kind of remote patient systems which Kuno and Ken have been talking about, they're absolutely vital to the future development. But what you're going to see now in the future is, remember that all these innovations are happening, individually, which they have to. You don't just do a massive rollout and do a big 5-year plan. It doesn't work like that. But you have to connect all of these. Okay, so you have to have integration with the HIS, the Hospital Information System, right? So you have to have this information go in to the hospital, out to the GP, other kind of district care workers, things like that, and to the patient as well. They're entitled to do that, and the patient is often left out. And then if you also, when you're looking at, let's say, COPD, or if you're looking at, let's say, other chronic diseases, these are absolutely massive in terms of the budget, which is going out, mostly to do with the fact that, particularly in the West, but also we're seeing in Asia as well, people are obese, people are gaining weight, they're getting the hypertension, they're getting other chronic diseases, and this is a huge wave which hasn't yet hit us in terms of expenditure. And one of the ways, this is why the system which Kuno has been talking about, and also there's been great work done by Professor Michael Miller in the UK and kind of raising awareness of this, is that you want to have the patient helped at home, but you also have to integrate that data later on, okay? And that means the data has to go into the system and come back out again, and that is not easy to do. So if you look at things like OpenEHR, that has been around for a long, long time, and you're only seeing adoption happening in a small number of countries right now, but that is a very positive development. What we're going to see, and well, actually not what we're going to see, but what I hope we will see in time, is that I will be able to get my health data off of this device and the full amount of it. And not only that, that I can display it to a doctor in any country that I go to, because when you get older, and particularly you have the issue of comorbidities, you have a hell of a lot to show in your personal kind of health records. So we also need to get beyond, or get to a place where a doctor can look at this and see a summary of your health history very, very quickly. And these are not easy challenges to solve. It's why the technology we have is quite valuable, I would say, because it will take the health records from one country and it can, how could I say, map them to the terminology of the country that you're in, or to a different district or whatever. So the data becomes interoperable. And that's something we're really, really excited about.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. And actually, just when you were holding up your device there, it reminded me of something else that Kuno had touched on. Bring your own device. Something I want to ask you is, so I'm thinking about our audience here, and who are mostly SMEs, and they're trying to grasp the big picture. Their job isn't just digital transformation or cybersecurity or GDPR. They're trying to grasp all of that, and it's such a big challenge. And at the beginning of the lockdown, we all went home and started working on our own devices until we got teched up. Some of the technology that we've seen rolled out in the healthcare system is things like, you know, electronic checklists for nursing staff, that everything doesn't have to be done on paper. How dangerous is it for staff to be using their own devices? And I suppose I'm going to ask you, Ken, in a moment about the Garda project. Did they invest in hardware as well as software? But I'll ask you about that first, Dermot. Do you think that the bring your own device, Kuno talked about the device may not be great. You know, is that a good approach? Is it the only approach we can do? Also, is it cost prohibitive for perhaps socially disadvantaged people? Are we going to end up with a two-tier system? What are your thoughts on that?
The two-tier system is something that does actually worry me. I do worry about certain sectors of or certain demographics of patients ending up in what I would call a digital slum, where they're forced into a digital infrastructure which they can't quite get the best value out of, and that they are neglected in other ways. For example, if they have access to broadband, or if they can, you know, get that. That's a kind of a broader concern I have. But on the other matter of whether you bring your own device, this is something that was touched on by industry, I think, you know, over a decade ago, and they came out with the kind of, well, you have different levels. You can have a hybrid approach. You can have the bring your own device, or you can have the fully enterprise driven, you know, one set of devices alone. You will get more take up with BYOD, but you have bigger problems on the security, because everyone's going to come in and give it a device. And I think it will be a cost benefit sort of solution at the end. You will say, well, what are the kind of family of devices that we are willing to have, or what are the family of stakeholders which we are willing to give this to, and should we force everybody else, or just give them another device? It will be down to the institution. There are ways forward, but it is sensitive for sure.
We're seeing at an industry level, we're seeing that almost being taken out of the hands of the enterprise or within the organization, because you have Google now understanding the GDPR compliance, where you used to have, you know, your container that was work related and it was contained. Then you had all your personal data that was sitting there existing on the one device. Google have now moved away from where that can't exist anymore in terms of that containerization. So I know it is a problem for the likes of, you know, HSE and those field workers. They have to come up with a decision of what they're going to do. You know, it was a nice idea of bring your own device, but the practicality going forward, I think, is going to be limited. So yeah, they may not have a choice. Industry might just, you know, it's going to keep separation. It does make sense that you would have, you know, from the cost of a hardware device, that you'd have the flexibility to, you know, for personal use, you get the benefit of it. But I think for GDPR and all the other data sensitivities, I think that'll just restrict us going forward.
Okay.
You mentioned about the guards. Sorry, Kuno. Yeah.
And then there's a aspect of quality of the devices that people have themselves. Often they are not good enough for the purpose, or people kind of use them in the wrong way or something like that. So that can be a problem as well.
So it can be. So there are lots of challenges there that are probably out of the hands of our client companies who are trying to get their technology into the hands of their customers. Yeah. So and no quick solutions, unfortunately. And Ken, you were going to come back in around the Gardaí and their implementation.
Yeah, the guards. I know people have, Kuno and Dermot, I know you're kind of living abroad and your perception of the police services may be mixed. You know, there's that old Irish kind of stereotype, you know, but the Irish police force was, you know, very much underinvested for many years, and it was a bit of the how are you getting on type of thing. But in the last 24 months, there's been a huge transformation through one of using a device. You know, they've gone with a Samsung Note 20 device. So it's to Kuno's point, it's very powerful, but also it's replacing a lot of the desktop computers. So if you could imagine in training rooms where you have all these towers of computer hardware sitting there doing nothing, they've eliminated that now by using just a powerful enough handheld device that gives them the, you know, the virtual desktop experience that meets all the requirements. And the beauty of that is it gives them flexibility around remote connectivity, mobility. It just transforms the way that they're now policing. And as I say, it's the applications that they enable on those devices that's changing the way that we're now policing in Ireland. I'm very careful now when I'm going down the road that I'm making sure I'm within the speed limit, because I know the power of this technology. They can catch you very quickly. And then also if you're a day over on your tax or insurance, they'll catch you as well. So they've definitely come on from a digital transformation perspective.
Okay, good to know. Thanks for flagging that one for us, Ken.
Yeah.
And Kuno, you talked about how the system can become fragmented. So you can see that if innovations are rolled out on a needs basis, which of course is the right way to do it, that you could have a need serviced in one chronic condition but not another, or one geographical area but not another. How have you seen this? Because you've worked in the north and the south of Denmark, have you seen it? Have you seen, you know, the system knit together? Or do you think that, from what you've seen, do you think that's working well?
I hope it will be working well at some time. We are working on that specific problem in Denmark, where we're trying to knit things together so that it works across borders and across regions, municipalities, and everything. But of course, it's the politicians in the regions who give the money to the projects, and it's not always going at the same speed all over the place. So there are problems, of course.
Yeah. So that can happen in Denmark as well. The investment may come more readily into one geographical area than another. Yeah. So that I suppose that's a universal problem. And in Ireland, actually, because of the fact that the HSE is at the beginning of its digital transformation journey, the leader of that, whose name is Martin Curley, has said that we are in a relatively good position because we can, you know, we can build something from scratch, as opposed to perhaps countries that have been in this journey for 10, 20 years that are now trying to bring it all together. So let's hope that we see that happen. I'm just going to check there if there are any more.
Sarah, I have a question both for Kuno and Dermot. And sometimes it's almost assumed in terms of the environment in which you're integrating. Is it a cloud-first environment, or, you know, there's the different applications that you're seeing out there? Is it automatically assumed that you're building in the cloud for the purposes of the different integrations of different phases of development into the future? And how do you integrate? I don't know, do you have perspectives on that?
Yeah, I would. So speaking from this corner of the world in Luxembourg, but more generally from the interaction I've had with people who've been longer in this sector than myself. I mean, the watchword from here is that almost all the hospitals are on MS Azure straight away. So that was the reason we mounted our AI on MS Azure as well, to just basically go in to be as compatible as possible. But also, if I can speak more specifically to the Duchy of Luxembourg, they have now created a data lake, or they are now creating a data lake, and they have so the first elements of the data lake where my EHR, for example, will end up in that lake and I can access it online. And that's going to be the case. And I'm not even resident there. I'm actually sitting in Germany, and Luxembourg is 2 kilometers that direction. So they're doing that for cross-border workers as well, who are registered into the system. And this is what I see happening into the future. But I would, as I said before, I would also like to be able to see that on the mobile device as well. It already is accessible because it's web-based, but I would also like to have my own personal health data no matter where I go, and being able to draw it down and file it away as I like.
It works the same way in Denmark as well. Everything is in the cloud in Denmark as well. So you can actually get a lot of your healthcare data on your phone in Denmark right now. The infrastructure we built is connected to the hospital systems, to the GP system, to the municipality system, and the patient itself can get access to the data right away if they want to. So
Dermot, I have one more question for you, and I would invite our participants as well to put their questions into the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. It's possibly at the top of the screen if you're on a phone. Dermot, you talked about commercialization from universities, which of course, as an agency that is based in a university, that's something very close to our hearts, and we work closely with researchers on commercializing their innovations. Have you come across challenges in IP and in ownership of IP and spinning out commercializing innovations?
Yeah, definitely. This is something where the thing with IP is that there's no, I was going to say there's no hard and fast rules. What I really mean to say is that IP is a matter of negotiation almost all the time. But there is, I would say, from my perspective, and I think this is also broadly seen by other people as well, the golden rule is to, if you're spinning off an entity, is to be pretty generous with them. Because if you get
Sorry, can I just stop you there? Pretty generous from the entrepreneur's point of view, be generous with the university, or the other way around?
The other way around, because you remember that the spin-off entity has to attract investment outside of the university. So you want to be as generous as possible with them, because the more generous you are with the spin-off, the legal entity which will hold the IP, the more likely that that legal entity will attract an investor or investors into the future. And that's what you really need to do to push technology to the market, and in particularly for health in Europe, because and in other regions where health is predominantly public sector led, because that is a very long, very tough sell, because there's whatever about clinical trials, but also the procurement cycle is very long. So you have to understand that the companies in that sector, they need a lot of firepower, so they need a lot of investment. You don't have to give them everything. I mean, you can be judicious about it. But my advice, certainly to anybody in the sector, is to be more generous rather than less generous.
Okay, and in your experience, when you're drawing up an IP agreement, does the startup need to take legal advice?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, because in this sort, any sort of contract, you know, you're going to have two parties. And I have occasionally in the past seen people asking me, when I was representing large organizations in consortia agreement, they said, look, do you think we should do this? And I said, well, look, you're an external party. And then obviously I could tell you what to do, but that could be in our advantage. My recommendation to you is to go and get your own legal advice just to be sure, because we need to end up in a fair and reasonable outcome here. Otherwise there'll be mistrust, and that's not going to work. What I would recommend, though, because many of the researchers that are going to market may be relatively young, may not have huge amount of funds at the beginning, is to have a kind of a rough template of the IP contract. It doesn't have to be complete, but you can highlight the areas which will be edited later on. Just be transparent about it, and also possibly to give a range. So I can't speak on other domains, but certainly for the digital domain where you're looking at software, my advice would be to remain, let's say, to go in single digits up to 10%. And the more mature the technology is, the more you can ask for. But if it's going to need more investment, then you need to go lower down that road. You don't have to stick to that, but you could say, look, this is broadly where we think we will land, but we might change this. And at least they can see right up front, okay, well, we know what to put into our cash flow, you know, what kind of revenues to hand back to the institution in the future.
Okay, and was that something that within EU programs, because you did mention the, you know, funds for startups are always difficult. Young people, researchers, people coming straight from university, that's a big challenge. Did you come across financial assistance from the EU or other entities there to help with legal costs?
Yeah, well, not necessarily with legal costs, but Luxembourg, for example, has a fantastic medtech program, which we will apply for, where you can come from anywhere in the world and turn up in Luxembourg and pitch, you know, because they want to get the best technologies and the best, you know, economic kind of generators for their country. And they're not too pushed on whether the people are Luxembourgish or not, which is a fantastic model to use. And then what they do is they will give you up to 150,000 euros in that, but it's done with a level of coaching as well. And this is something which is really, really valuable to young entrepreneurs. Now, I myself, I've been around the block a few times, so and I'm at an age where there is capital available to me. So I'm thinking of the younger researchers who maybe haven't even had a chance to go out into industry. They're people that need a lot of support, really a lot of support. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be averse to people, even if they end up on the dole briefly, to use that time to do their own market research, you know, and things like that. They don't actually have to incorporate a company. They can say, I'm Mr. XYZ, and at the moment I'm just doing my market research. Would you mind telling me a few things? There's nothing wrong with that, you know, absolutely nothing wrong with that. So you know, really leverage everything that you can do when you're young. That's why I say do make a meal of it, you know, when you're young.
Okay, and I'm just going to bring in one last comment there that Kuno said in his presentation. He said, "Fail fast. You know, get your innovation out there, find out what your target market thinks of it, and develop it from there." Okay, would any of you like to add any closing comments before we close the panel discussion?
Andy has a question there, I think.
Great, Andy, thank you.
Just a little bit of a tease for you, because we've talked about bring your own device and the risks and the safety issues, and I'm seeing that in the context from patients and citizens using these, thinking, I've got big organisations that are being taken down left, right, and centre by cyber hacks, and supposedly I'm the problem with my cheap smartphone. I'm also getting the message from patients and citizen groups who say telehealth has been astounding during the pandemic in teaching me that my doctor has a telephone. I don't care if they've got a smartphone or I've got lack of connectivity. I didn't realise they had a telephone at the doctors. And that's not just within the UK, it's across multiple countries. And I think that flags up an issue about expectation and raising people's expectations, because I think for many people, expectations are minimal to the extent of saying, I'd like to be able to get my repeat prescription online. I'd like to be able to book an appointment online to see my doctor, maybe to see them online, even if I just speak to them. But we're trying to develop very, very complex systems, but the expectation from the end users is actually quite small. Do we need to raise that? Or do we need to think, well, we actually need to meet that first before we think the big stuff? That's my question.
Yeah, I'm gonna propose an answer to that first. Yeah, I'm so with the patient on this, because I can't speak for Ireland because I've been out of there for a while, but certainly on the continent you get reimbursement mechanisms. So the doctors in Germany were reimbursed to do things a certain way, but they're also reimbursed around stationery and things like that. So they wouldn't digitize. And I can tell you, it's still super frustrating for me to get, let's say, a repeat prescription for an inhaler, or I have to wait in a GP's waiting room, possibly for 2 hours, because they have not moved on to scheduling or anything which I would expect in modern day-to-day interactivity. And the only way to fix that is a top-down approach. And the Germans have come to realize this. So they're actually going to change many of their reimbursement mechanisms in order to do that. And I think reimbursement is the way to change a system. It's to say, you can trial it somewhere first, of course, but then say, look, we're going to encourage people to do this and give them some reimbursement. But overall, it should become the norm to be slotted in for your 15 minutes, you know, not turn up and lose half a day. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. I can only agree. I mean, the patients have big expectations in Denmark, and the weak point is often the doctors who, at least before the COVID and the Corona, didn't want to go on the phone with their patients. They wanted to see them in the clinic. This changed rapidly over the last year. The doctors now really found out that it's actually no problem to see the patients via the phone or something like that. But it's not the patients that are the problem. It's the healthcare personnel, the doctors in specific.
Yeah, even Ireland locally, I think even through the Healthmail example that I shared, you know, e-prescriptions, that's been a transformation, that you don't have to go back into the GP practice to get your prescription. You know, you can collect it at whatever chemist you go into. That's all part of that ecosystem within Healthmail. There's some new legislation coming down the line as well within Ireland. We have currently, you know, the fair deal, where if someone's going to go into a care home, there's the value of their house that contributes towards that care. But the big thing for families, it's down to, you know, the patient pathway in terms of what's happening with them. You know, there's people at stages in their life, they never want to go into a nursing home, you know, so why can't they stay at their home environment and facilitate the infrastructure to facilitate that? So we're seeing that there's legislation going through the Irish government now. Instead of using the value of your home to put you into a nursing home, you could use the value of your home to enable technology so you can stay at home, which I think is a real positive thing. And then to Kuna's point, you're going to have your different chronic diseases or whatever that will be very specific. You're going to enable solutions in the home that's going to give the best connected experience and the best diagnostic experience that you would expect. And there's all the components of that would have to be considered and provisioned for. Yeah. So yeah, the device is one piece, and we'd all love to see just a simple application sitting on a device. but I think it's down to the nature of what's happening with the individual and what is the best level of care for those. You mentioned Acorn and that device coming out of Dundalk. You know, they're partnered up with a company now in Ireland. Again, they're starting to make it a splash, is Halo Care, and around it's unobtrusive care in the home. So using AI and different technology just to observe, you know, how a person is coping when they're at home alone, and then informing, you know, the circle of trust around how that person is getting on. But then also being supported by a contact center that dials in and says, well, you put your food into the fridge, but you haven't gone and cooked any dinner, you know, and having these interactions. Or Andy, you mentioned fall prevention. The technology is there, you know, it can observe the idea of a fall or a potential fall. So there's really smart technologies that are coming down the line that hopefully will take the decision-making away from the end user. It'll just be enabled for them, and then it should be seamless.
Great, thank you. Okay, anybody else want to come in before we thank our panelists and let them off the hook? Okay, folks, thank you very, very much. That was really enlightening, very enjoyable. And so I'm just going to release you from the spotlight now. And just to wrap up, I'm going to just put up our contact details. We had a technical difficulty earlier and they didn't pop up on the screen while Angela was speaking. So I'm just going to pop them up now for you so that you can see the dates of our workshops and our contact details for future events. So can you see that okay? Is it in present mode?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And there we are. So there are the dates of our upcoming workshops. And I'm just going to put up our contact details now. And please do get in touch. And we would be absolutely delighted to deal with your queries and to support you in whatever way we can. We have a handy email there. It's deconnect@dkit.ie. And that email comes directly into us. And we will be back to you as soon as we can to answer your query. So thanks to everyone today. Thank you to our friends in ECH Alliance, first of all, who helped us to organize this workshop, and for your wonderful presentations. Thanks to all at Deconnect who put this together. Thanks to our panelists, Kuno, Ken and Dermot, for your insights and input, which is very informative and enjoyable. And thanks very much to our attendees for joining the webinar, and we hope to see you again at our next webinar on the 18th of May, which is on medical device regulation. So I'll say goodbye for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.